and welcome to all in the Grounded Voices 88 series session. Grounded Voices वो series है जो हम लोगों ने कोविड के बीच में चालू की थी और the series actually attempts to actually get all the struggles, all the voices which are happening in all over India in different formats. We have covered many issues such as floods, the forest rights issue, the labor rights issue, what happened about the whole issue of the employment during the pandemic, the issues such like hijab and the whole issue what is happening not only in Karnataka, the other various issues. There has been attempt to also catch up the local struggles, which is what is happening in the Chhattisgarh about the in the medical college, and there have been various issues which have been covered in Grounded Voices series, जिसमें हम कोशिश करते हैं कि भारत भर के संघर्षों में जमीनी स्तर पर जुड़े हुए कार्यकर्ताओं की आवाजें आ जाए. In today's series is actually a sort of a continuation of two earlier sessions which happened took place in last 2 months. उसमें से one of the session was on the both the sections have been on the flood. One focused on the floods which are happening in the river flood, जिसमें हमने आसाम में आए हुए, जिस समय we all of us are aware what happened in the Assam this time. The towns like Silchar which were completely drowned and deluged. We also covered the issues which are different, just like what's happening in the Kosi, जहाँ पे annual flood आता है, and what is the government responsibility and how the whole resettlement and rehabilitation package and the anomaly plays out there. We also covered Uttar Pradesh and the issues जो flood के कारण जो कटान होती है, not exactly flood, but what happens when there are barrages are built and the people, there is a land erosion, and as a result how people are displaced every year. So these are the various issues we covered in that area. We actually then later on focused our attention to the issues which are the comparatively a very recent phenomena of last 20-25 years, and now which has become one of the major prominent issues when the floods which are happening in the urban areas. And we covered Bombay, we talked about Chennai, we saw how those cities are sinking and how that whole development has affected the school development model, the coastal road project, the Bombay Bandra Kurla complex, and how the cities have started getting more and more flooded because of the huge construction boom, the completely skewed city, urban city planning, and now last year month, we all have seen and read, and you people mostly from the Bangalore have suffered what has happened in the Bangalore, the so-called millennium city, the so-called the high-tech city of India. और वहां पे जिस तरह का फ्लड आया है और जिस प्रकार के हमने सबने टीवी पे न्यूज़पेपर में all of us are seeing these photos. Today we are going to talk about these issues. एंड आज हमारे साथ काफी सारे बैंगलोर के जिन लोगों ने बैंगलोर में ये पूरे मुद्दे उठाए हैं वो साथी जुड़े हुए हैं. There's Bhargavi who have been working on this issue for a very long time. There's Lekha and Tousif and P Singh, and we'll have a moderator as a Sachi. Sachi is a journalist currently interning with the News Minutes and Confluence Media. She's a social and human rights activist and works with Bahutva Karnataka. तो हम सची के पास हम अभी जाते हैं, and Sachi will moderate this session. Welcome and thank you, Sachi, and over to you. Thank you.
Hi, thank you, Arundhati, for the introduction. I'm Sachi, a journalist and an activist working with Bahutva Karnataka. Some quick housekeeping rules before we begin the session. I request everybody to place yourself on mute, but I encourage everybody to leave in your questions via the chat function, and we shall pick them up at the end of the session. To start off, I have also written an article about how the flood has affected children, especially in the working class areas. So as many of you are aware, the recent flood due to the torrential rains and the encroachment of the stormwater drain, what we call the Raja Kalves, has created an havoc in the city. And so the news media, the government's relief work seems to be concentrated towards the IT corridors and the gated communities, but very less attention seems to be garnering towards the working class settlements like the BBMP sanitation and migrant workers. Our speakers today have been working on the ground from providing relief to ensuring that the government reaches out and listens to the people in the city. And now, however, the conversation seems to be building about how the living condition in the city is very bad, and how little action has the government been taking, and the dynamic that the caste and class plays. So I would like to introduce the speakers quickly. The speakers for today are Syed, Tousif Ahmed, Lekha, Adavi, P Singh, and Bhargavi Rao. So our first speaker is Syed Tousif. He works with Project Smile in Bengaluru, and he is involved in relief works to the flood affected areas in Kaduguri and Whitefield. I would request Syed Tousif to present his talk now. Thank you.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Sachi, English should be fine, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, as as Sachi has mentioned, see, recently, a few weeks back, we had a continuous rain in Bangalore, and then most of the IT corridor, particularly Whitefield, Marthali, Shajapur areas were flooded. Though it was covered extensively in the media, local as well as national, but most of the concentration was around the IT companies, on the apartments, villas, and all, wherein particularly whether it is the a rescue effort from the government, whether it is SDRF, NDRF, or the police and all, immediately people went there and tried to rescue people and all. But there were this extremely marginalized communities of like the BBMP corporation workers, Paurokrumas, and the immigrant workers who are there in different slums called Munekolala, Kariyamanagrahara, Whitefield, Kadugudi, and all. So very little help went there, and even when the help has arrived, it went very late. So specifically, the area where our team was working, it is called Kadugudi in Whitefield. So there are like six settlements there. These are all mainly immigrant workers who are all like rag pickers. They pick waste, segregate waste, and sell waste. This is the occupation what they are involved in. That's why they generally they live in the like outskirts and the far end of the city. So this these settlements is one of the settlement which had been uh, one of the most badly affected area, wherein almost the water was like 6-7 feet. It was almost submerged, and even the access roads for these the slums and the settlements and all, and these are all like kacha houses just with like tin sheets and the plastic blue tents, those kind of things. This is not even the basic housing with like asbestos sheets and all, and they don't have any kind of whether it is sanitation, sewage line, or electricity. Nothing of that sort is there, because these are all like temporary settlements. Since they pick waste and this thing, they'll be keep moving. They'll be there for one place on like 6 months to 1 year, or maximum 2 years, and again they'll be keep shifting the base. So that's why they don't have any kind of a safety net or the any kind of a support from the establishment, or for that matter even the neighbors or the community in and around. So even the access road was extremely in terrible state, because it's like mostly mud road and all. Even up till about 400 to 500 meters, uh, even there was a heavy water logging. And if you compare with the relief support what they got, and the people who are living in the high end villas and apartments, over there was like hardly only the if you compare with the upper middle class people and the affluent class, over there only basements were waterlogged. their vehicles had been damaged, and it was just like 2-3 feet or maximum 4-5 feet of water. Even for that, people had taken boats and all, NDRF and all. They had brought rafts and all, and they were taken away. In fact, here it was almost neck deep water, and there were ladies, there were small kids. In fact, when our team was rescuing people, there were easily about 100 children who were like less than 5-6 years old. And in fact, there were few children who were just like 8 days, 10 days old and all. And there were pregnant women and all whom we had to carry. And in fact, there was one incident wherein in one of the settlement, and there was a 9 month plus pregnant woman who was like how you, she just had tied with a sari, like a hammock kind of a thing, and she was on top, and there was like 5-6 feet of water. And she was rescued around 4 p.m. and it was raining entire night, and from morning only the water started to rise. So from the morning, she had not eaten anything, she had not drank water, nothing of that sort. And she was in that kind of state. And once they were they were rescued to a safety, the place of safety, which was like 700-800 meters away, about a kilometer away. Then we tried to support them, help them, and all. For that, we requested the local BBMP, the local municipal authority here, that one of the AA, and he was kind enough that he allowed us to accommodate them in the government school. Then we rehabilitated them into the government Kannada school and government Urdu school, about 450 to 480 people, men, women, children, and all. And they were kept there for like 6 days, from Tuesday till Sunday. And we had provided them with the all three times food, water for kids, whatever milk, snack, biscuits, and all are there. We give them blankets. Uh, then a lot of the community support also came in. We gave them some clothes, and whatever was possible, we took care of them. And we had cooked about every day. We had set up a temporary kitchen as well, and we used to cook about 5,000 meals every day, all three times put together. And apart from this area, there is another area called Kodati in Sharjapur Road. Over there also, we used to send food. And after this, we had done one two medical camps as well, with the help of the local PHC doctor, just to ensure that because of the water, because of the all the mud and all the filth around, there were small children and the women and all, so they don't any kind of a health hazard doesn't happen. So that was done. And then after the water, everything was receded in 3 to 4 days. Saturday, few people went back to their houses, and Sunday, everyone else went back. Now, if you see the irony, uh, the kind of support what the different there is a blatant discrimination between person who speaks Kannada, or even if somebody who doesn't speak Kannada, but they know how to use Facebook, Twitter, they can call up a DCP or an ACP or a BBMP commissioner. The kind of service what they give to them, it is entirely different. And the kind of service given to these immigrants, though they are in a much more vulnerable condition and more need of the support than the people on the other side, it is entirely different. And in fact, till now, it is almost, I think this is the third week now. If I'm not wrong, 9th, 10th was the date when these rains started. Sorry, I think it was 5th, 6th was the date when it was raining. still these people have not got compensation. In fact, we are working with Maitri. Most of the people might know Maitri through her to collect their details and submit to the BBMP for the compensation for the damage which has occurred to them. But still, that has not been done. Though the local people, when I say the people who speak Kannada and all, those people have already got the compensation. So there is a blatant discrimination between different communities. Yeah. Sachi, I think I have given a brief context, and if anything more is there, maybe in the question answer session or something, maybe I can add
Yes.
to it if anything specific uh, that I need to say.
Yes, thank you, Tousif. Our next speaker is Lekha. As Tousif mentioned, that in the working class areas, the government relief seems to be coming in very late. And Lekha, she's an advocate and she's been working with AICCTU, All India Central Council of Trade Unions. And she has been working along with the All India Students Association to provide relief work in the flood affected areas, including providing ration, school materials for the children, and doing a survey of all the people living there, so that the government relief can be reached to them. So, Lekha, on to you.
Thank you, Sachi, and thanks to NAPM for having me in this discussion today. Tousif has already given an entire account of how much of relief efforts has gone into these areas in Bangalore in the past few weeks. So thanks for that, Tousif. I mean, as Tousif also said, the image of India's Silicon Valley being flooded over these 2 weeks, and the images that were covered even in international media was that of CEOs of these companies being ferried in tractors and boats from their houses, or the ankle deep water, or the Mercedes Benzes and BMWs that were parked in basements and IT parks, drowning in the torrential rains. And of course, the drone shots of how IT parks and gated communities and the villas and apartment complexes over there have been flooded with the water. But of course, the people who were majorly affected by the were the working class families who are working in these very IT parks and the apartment complexes surrounding their residential areas. These are the people who work as Paurakarmikas or the sanitation workers. These are the people who work as domestic workers in the apartment complex nearby, or the construction workers who have constructed these IT parks and malls and hospitals, which are there in the part of all over the who have cities clean by contributing through the solid waste management system. But of course, the Bangalore floods hit the city. One, of course, talks about how underpasses are flooded and how Chickpete area and the entire Pete area is flooded, and how the residents who own these apartments and who work in these corporate companies have been affected, because then they'll have to work from home and they had no access to milk or ration, and how delivery people were unable to deliver food items and ration to them. Of course, I mean, it was a very difficult time for people who were living in that part of Bangalore city. But of course, contrary to that, in contradictory images, the working class people had their complete houses inundated in water. They lost their two-wheelers, they lost their electronic gadgets, they lost important documents, children lost their education materials, like Sachi was talking about. They had no textbooks, they had no notebooks to go to school the next day. and a lot of people suffered losses up to thousands of rupees. In fact, one of the instances where our organization, the All India Central Council of Trade Unions, intervened was when we got calls in the middle of the night from some of our workers in these areas saying that one of the big tech parks over there has been pumping out water that is, logged into their premises, into their area in the middle of the night, and which is what caused the inundation of their houses. When the workers went to the IT park and requested them to not pump out their water, and it was flooding their households, they said, okay, we won't do it, but continue to do it. And there has been absolutely no action taken against these big corporate real estate enterprises, whereas the work families have suffered, so much loss. When we looked at all of these things, I think there are two crucial issues that come up for us. One is in terms of how unequal distribution of wealth and resources have taken place, and which is very visible in the city of Bangalore. And secondly, of course, climate change. So if we have to talk about both of these things, we'll have to look at how the real estate capitalism has grown in Bangalore city, and how the historical caste class relations have enabled the corruption and encroachment that has taken place. But when the Bangalore flooding happened and the government had to intervene, and the chief minister announced the anti-encroachment drive, it was these working class residential areas which are located on these lake beds, which are on the Rajkalves, the waterways which have been there historically, and the middle to small and middle income families whose houses were demolished by the BBMP. The BBMP did not look at a Wipro, a Columbia Asia Hospital, a Bagmane Tech Park, or these big real estate companies who have been encroaching on these waterways and the lakes. No action was taken against them, even though their names came up on a notification which declared that these are the people who are encroaching these places, and which is why the flooding occurred in the first place. And even if you have to talk about how urban planning has taken place, and how the city of Bangalore has evolved into what it is today, the working class has been systematically been kept out of urban planning processes. You plan a metro rail system for Bangalore, you plan where a flyover has to come, where a underpass has to come, where you will have a mall, and where you will build the IT hub of the city. But you want their labor force, you want the labor of these millions of people, but they will not
I think Lekha has some connection issues.
Yeah. I think there's a connection issue with Lekha. She'll get back. Yeah, so there's an internet problem. She's joining in a minute. Please wait.
Can we request Dviji to just do a brief Kannada gist until then?
Yeah, sure. So Dviji will be doing, will be summarizing Tousif's and Lekha's talk in Kannada.
Sure. ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ. ಜನಾಂದೋಲನ ರಾಷ್ಟ್ರೀಯ ಸಮನ್ವಯ ಕಡೆಯಿಂದ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರವಾಹ ಬಂದು ಏನು ಹಾನಿಯಾಗಿತ್ತು, ಜನಗಳಿಗೆ ಎಷ್ಟೊಂದು ತೊಂದರೆಗಳಾದ್ವು, ಅದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಯಾರ್ಯಾರು ಹೊಣೆ ತಗೋಬೇಕು, ಇದರಲ್ಲಿ ನಾಗರಿಕರ ಪಾತ್ರ ಏನು ಅನ್ನೋದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಒಂದು ಈ ಗ್ರೌಂಡೆಡ್ ವಾಯ್ಸಸ್ ಅಥವಾ ಜಮೀನಿ ಆವಾಜೆ ಅಂತ ಒಂದು ಶ್ರೇಣಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಇದು ಎಪಿಸೋಡ್ ಇದು. ಇವತ್ತು ನಮ್ ಜೊತೆ ಸೈದ್ ತೌಸಿಫ್ ಅವ್ರು ಸೇರಿದ್ರು. ಅವರು ಮುಖ್ಯವಾಗಿ ಒಂದ್ ಎರಡು ವಿಷಯ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು. ಒಂದು, ನಾವು ಜನಗಳು ಅಂದಾಗ ಯಾವಾಗ್ಲೂ ಕನ್ನಡ ಮಾತಾಡೋರನ್ನೇ ಅನ್ಕೊಳ್ತೀವಿ ಅಥವಾ ಆನ್ಲೈನ್ ಇರೋರೇ ಅನ್ಕೊಳ್ತೀವಿ. ಆದ್ರೆ ಈ ಏರಿಯಾಗಳಲ್ಲಿ, ಈ ಇಲಾಖೆಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಸಾಕಷ್ಟು ಜನ ವಲಸೆ ಬಂದಿರೋ ಜನಗಳಿದ್ರು. ಅದ್ರಲ್ಲೂ ಸಣ್ಣ ಸಣ್ಣ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಬೆಂಗಳೂರಲ್ಲಿ ಹಲವಾರು ವರ್ಷಗಳಿಂದ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರಲ್ಲಿ ಇದ್ರುನು ಅವ್ರ ಒಂಥರ ಸ್ಥಿರವಾದ ಮನೆ ಅಂತ ಇಲ್ಲ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ. ಈಗ ಒಂದ್ 6 ತಿಂಗಳು ಇಲ್ಲಿರ್ತಾರೆ, ಇನ್ನೊಂದು 10 ತಿಂಗಳು ಇನ್ನೆಲ್ಲೋ ಇರ್ತಾರೆ. ಆತರ ವಲಸೆ ಅಂತ ಸಮುದಾಯಗಳೇ ಆದ್ರಿಂದ ಅವ್ರ ಹತ್ರ ಯಾವ್ದು ಒಂಥರ ಪೇಪರ್ಗಳಿರೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ತಮ್ಮ ಒಂದು ಹಕ್ಕನ್ನ ತಾವು ತೋರಿಸ್ಕೊಳಕ್ಕೆ ಅಥವಾ ಅದನ್ನ ಪಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಸಾಧನೆಗಳಿರೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಅಂಥ ಸಮುದಾಯಗಳ ಜೊತೆ ಪ್ರಾಜೆಕ್ಟ್ ಸ್ಮೈಲ್ನವರು ಸುಮಾರು ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಿದಾರೆ ಮೊದ್ಲುನು. ಈಗ ಈ ಪ್ರವಾಹದಲ್ಲೂ ಅಂತ ಸಮುದಾಯಗಳ ಜೊತೆನೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಕಾಡ್ಗೋಡಿ ಅನ್ನೋ ಏರಿಯಾನಲ್ಲಿ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು ಅಂತ ಹಂಚ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರು. ಅಲ್ಲಿನ ತೊಂದರೆಗಳು, ಅಲ್ಲಿನ ಜನಗಳ ಒಂದಷ್ಟು ಬಿಕ್ಕಟ್ಟುಗಳು, ಅದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಸುಮಾರು ಹಂಚ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರು. ಮುಖ್ಯವಾಗಿ ಒಂದೆರಡು ವಿಷಯಗಳು ಅವ್ರು ಹೇಳಿದ್ದು ಮನ್ಸಿಗೆ ಮುಟ್ಟಿದ್ದೇನು ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಒಬ್ರು ಆಕೆ ಒಂದ್ 60 ವರ್ಷ ಆಗಿರ್ಬೋದೇನೋ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ. ಅವರು ಸೀರೆನ ಕಟ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಮೇಲ್ಗಡೆ ಒಂದ್ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಎತ್ತರದಲ್ಲಿ ಕಟ್ಕೊಂಡು ಅದ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ಮಲ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ರಂತೆ. ಯಾಕೆಂದ್ರೆ ಕೆಳಗಡೆ ನೀರ್ ತುಂಬಿಕೊಂಡಿದೆ, ಅವ್ರು ನಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಅನ್ನೋ ಪರಿಸ್ಥಿತಿ ಇರ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ. 5 ಅಡಿ 6 ಅಡಿಯಷ್ಟು ಆಳವರೆಗೂ ನೀರಿತ್ತು. ಸೊ ಇವ್ರುನು ಎಲ್ಲ ಹೋದಾಗ ಸಾಕಷ್ಟು ಈ ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ ಡಿಸಾಸ್ಟರ್ ರಿಲೀಫ್ನವ್ರನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ, ನ್ಯಾಷನಲ್ ಡಿಸಾಸ್ಟರ್ ರಿಲೀಫ್ ಅವರು, ಪೊಲೀಸ್ ಅವರು, ಅವ್ರ ಜೊತೆ ಎಲ್ಲ ಹೋಗಿ ಇವರು ನಿಜವಾಗ್ಲೂ ಹೋಗಿ ಮಾತಾಡ್ದಾಗ್ಲೇನೆ ಅವರು ಈ ಕಡೆ ಗಮನ ಹರಿಸಿದ್ದು. ಇಲ್ದಿದ್ರೆ ಎಲ್ಲ IT-BT ಇದ್ರಿಂದನೇ ನೋಡ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ರು. ಕನ್ನಡ ಮಾತಾಡೋರು ಯಾರು ಅವ್ರು ಮುಟ್ಟಕ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇತ್ತು ಅಂತವ್ರು ನೋಡ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ರೆ ಹೊರತು ಇಂಥ ಕಡೆ ಅವರು ಸಹಾಯ ತಲುಪಿಸಿರ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ ಇದು ಒಂದು ಮುಖ್ಯವಾದ ವಿಷಯ ಅವ್ರು ಹಂಚ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದು. ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ವಿಷಯ ಅವ್ರು ಹಂಚ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದೇನು ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಇವರು ಜನಗಳ ಜೊತೆ ಮಾತಾಡಿ ಹೆಂಗೆ ಇವ್ರು ರೆಸ್ಕ್ಯೂ ಮಾಡಿ ಅವ್ರನ್ನ ಕರ್ಕೊಂಡ್ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರು. ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಸ್ಥಳೀಯವಾಗಿ ಸರ್ಕಾರಿ ಶಾಲೆಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾತಾಡಿ ಅವ್ರ ಜಾಗ ಕೇಳಿದಾಗ ಶಾಲೆ ಇದು ಡಿಪಾರ್ಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಎಜುಕೇಶನ್ ಅವರು ಮತ್ತು ಬೇರೆ ಅಲ್ಲಿನ ಇಲಾಖೆ ಅಧಿಕಾರಿಗಳೆಲ್ಲ ಸಹಕರಿಸಿದ್ರು. ಬಟ್ ಕೇಳ್ಬೇಕಾಯ್ತು. ಇಂಥದನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ಅವರು ಇವಾಗ ಇದೇ ಇಲಾಖೆನವರು, ಇದೇ ಸರ್ಕಾರದವರು ಹೋಗಿ ಎದ್ದು ಬಿದ್ದು ಅಲ್ಲಿ IT-ನವ್ರಿಗೆ, ಅಪಾರ್ಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಕಾಂಪ್ಲೆಕ್ಸ್ನವ್ರಿಗೆ ಇವ್ರಿಗೆಲ್ಲ ಮಾಡ್ತಿರೋವಾಗ ಬಡ ಜನರಿಗೂ ಅದೇ ಹಕ್ಕುಗಳಿದಾವೆ. ಇವ್ರು ಇಲ್ಲಿನ ಸ್ಥಳೀಯವಾದ ಜನಗಳೇನೆ, ಇಲ್ಲಿನ ಒಂದು ಆರ್ಥಿಕ ವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಇವರು ಒಂದು ಮುಖ್ಯವಾದ ಪಾತ್ರ ವಹಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನ ಗುರುತಿಸ್ದೇನೆ ಅಲ್ಗಳಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರು. ಸೊ ಇವ್ರ ಪ್ರಾಜೆಕ್ಟ್ ಸ್ಮೈಲ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಸಾಕಷ್ಟು ಅದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಗಮನ ಹರಿಸಕ್ಕಾಯ್ತು. ಸೊ ಇನ್ನೂ ಒಂದಷ್ಟು ವಿಷಯಗಳಿದಾವೆ, ಆದ್ರೆ ಅದನ್ನ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೋತ್ತರಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಹಂಚ್ಕೊಳ್ತೀನಿ ಅಂತ ತಿಳಿಸಿದ್ರು. ಲೇಖಾ ಅವರು ಒಬ್ರು ವಕೀಲರು. ಅವರು ಇಲ್ಲಿ AICCTU ಆಲ್ ಇಂಡಿಯಾ ಸೆಂಟ್ರಲ್ ಕೌನ್ಸಿಲ್ ಫಾರ್ ಟ್ರೇಡ್ ಯೂನಿಯನ್ಸ್ ಜೊತೆಗೂ ಹಾಗೂ ಇನ್ನ ಬೇರೆ ಒಂದಷ್ಟು ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಗಳ ಜೊತೆ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಅವರು ಮುಖ್ಯವಾಗಿ ಹಂಚ್ಕೊಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಿದ್ದು 2-3 ವಿಷಯಗಳು ಇಲ್ಲಿವರೆಗೂ ಹಂಚ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದು. ಏನಪ್ಪಾ ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಈಗ IT-BT ಕಂಪನಿಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಎಷ್ಟೊಂದು ಇದು ಎನ್ಕ್ರೋಚ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಗಳು ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ತಾವು ಸ್ಯಾಂಕ್ಷನ್ ತಗೊಂಡಿರೋದಲ್ದೇನೆ ಬೇಕಾದಷ್ಟು ಹೆಚ್ಚಾಗಿ ರಾಜಕಾಲುವೆಗಳ ಮೇಲೆ, ಕೆರೆಗಳ ಜಮೀನಲ್ಲೆಲ್ಲ ತಮ್ಮ ಬಿಲ್ಡಿಂಗ್ ಗಳನ್ನ, ತಮ್ಮ ಕ್ಯಾಂಪಸ್ ಲ್ಯಾಂಡ್ಸ್ಕೇಪಿಂಗ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಆದ್ರೆ ಯಾವಾಗ ನೋಟಿಫಿಕೇಶನ್ ಅವ್ರ ಹೆಸರು ಇದ್ದು ಮಧ್ಯಮ ವರ್ಗದವ್ರದ್ದು ಇದ್ರೂನು ಅದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಅವ್ರ ಗಮನ ಹರಿಸೋದಿಲ್ಲ ಸರ್ಕಾರದವರು. ಡೆಮಾಲಿಷನ್ ಡ್ರೈವ್ ಅಂದಾಗ ಈ ಮಧ್ಯಮ ವರ್ಗದವ್ರನ್ನ ಹಾಗೂ ಬಡವ ಜನರ ಮನೆಗಳನ್ನೇ ಡೆಮಾಲಿಷ್ ಮಾಡಕ್ ಹೋಗ್ತಾರೆ. ಸೊ ಇದು ಒಂದು ತುಂಬಾನೇ ಕೆಟ್ಟ ಒಂದು ಪರಿಸ್ಥಿತಿನಲ್ಲೂ ನಾವು ಯಾವಾಗ AICCTU ಅವರು ಮತ್ತು ಲೇಖಾ ಅವರು ಮತ್ತು ಅವರ ಜೊತೆ ಇದ್ದವರೆಲ್ಲ ಯಾವಾಗ ಇಂಟರ್ವ್ಯೂನ್ ಮಾಡಿದಾಗ ಒಂದ್ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಆದ್ರೂ ಅದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಗಮನ ಸರ್ಕಾರದವ್ರು ಲೆಕ್ಕಕ್ಕೆ ತಗೊಂಡ್ರು. ಆ ಡೆಮಾಲಿಷನ್ ಅನ್ನು ನಾಮಕೆ ವಾಸ್ತೆ ಅನ್ನೋ ಹಂಗೆ ಮೀಡಿಯಾಗೆ ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ತೋರ್ಸೋ ಹಂಗೆ ಅನ್ನೋ ಹಂಗೆ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರು. ಬಾಗ್ಮನೆ ಟೆಕ್ ಪಾರ್ಕ್ ಆಗ್ಲಿ, ಇಲ್ಲ ಬೇರೆ ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಲೇಖಾ ಅವ್ರು ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು, ತೌಸಿಫ್ ಅವ್ರು ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು, ಸಾರಿ ನಂಗೆ ಗಮನ ಮಿಸ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ಬಟ್ ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಮುಖ್ಯವಾದ ವಿಷಯ ಅವ್ರು ಹೇಳಿದ್ದೇನು ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಈ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಒಂದು ಅಪಾರ್ಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಕಾಂಪ್ಲೆಕ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನೀರ್ ತುಂಬಿಕೊಂಡಿತ್ತು. ಆ ನೀರನ್ನ ಅವರ ಪಂಪ್ ಮಾಡಕ್ ಶುರು ಮಾಡ್ಬಿಟ್ರು. ಆ ಪಂಪ್ ಮಾಡಿದ ನೀರು ಬಂದು ಈ ಬಡ ಜನರ ಸಣ್ಣ ಸಣ್ಣ ಮನೆಗಳು, ಗುಡಿಸಲುಗಳ ಇರೋ ಕಡೆಯಿಂದ ನೀರು ತುಂಬಿಕೊಳ್ತಾ ಇತ್ತು. ಸೊ ಇವರು ಹೋಗಿ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ತಕ್ಷಣ ಅಪಾರ್ಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಕಾಂಪ್ಲೆಕ್ಸ್ ಅವ್ರ ಹತ್ರ ಮಾತಾಡಿ, ಸರ್ಕಾರದವ್ರ ಹತ್ರ ಮಾತಾಡಿ ಆ ಪಂಪಿಂಗ್ ಅನ್ನ ನಿಲ್ಸಕ್ಕಾಯ್ತು. ಹಂಗೂನು ಸಾಕಷ್ಟು ಮನೆಗಳು ಅದರಿಂದ ಕೊಚ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋದ್ವು, ನೆರೆನಲ್ಲಿ ಮುಳುಗೋಯ್ತು. ತೌಸಿಫರ್ ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ವಿಷಯ ಹೇಳಿದ್ದೇನಪ್ಪಾ ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಈ ಪರಿಹಾರ ಅಂತ ಏನ್ ಕೊಡ್ತಾ ಇದೆಯೋ ಸರ್ಕಾರ, ಅದನ್ನ ಪಡಿಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಈ ವಲಸೆ ಬಂದಿರೋ ಜನಗಳಿಗೂ ಅಧಿಕಾರ ಇದೆ, ಅವ್ರಿಗೂ ಒಂದು ಹಕ್ಕಿದೆ. ಆದ್ರೆ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಇನ್ನೂ ಸಿಕ್ಕಿಲ್ಲ. ಈಗಾಗಲೇ 3 ವಾರಕ್ಕಿಂತ ಹೆಚ್ಚಾಗಿದೆ. 3 ವಾರ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಬಂತು ಈ ಪ್ರವಾಹ ಬಂದು ಎಲ್ಲ ಆಗಿ. ಪರಿಹಾರ ಅನೌನ್ಸ್ ಮಾಡಿ 2 ವಾರಕ್ಕಿಂತ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆಗಿದೆ, ಬಟ್ ಇನ್ನು ಜನಗಳಿಗೆ ಸಿಕ್ಕಿಲ್ಲ. ಅದೇ ಕನ್ನಡ ಮಾತಾಡೋರ್ಗೆ, ಫೇಸ್ಬುಕ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಇರೋರ್ಗೆ ಅಂಥವ್ರಿಗೆ ಈ ಪರಿಹಾರಧನ ಸಿಕ್ಕಿದೆ. ಇವರು ಬಂದಿದಾರ, ನಮ್ಮ ಲೇಖಾ ಅವರು ವಾಪಸ್ ಸೇರಿದಾರ. ಹ್ಯಾಸ್ ಲೇಖಾ ಜಾಯಿಂಡ್ ಅಗೇನ್?
ಬಂದಿದ್ದೀನಿ ದ್ವಿಜಿ.
ಓಕೆ, ಪ್ಲೀಸ್ ಲೇಖಾ ಮುಂದುವರಿಸಿ.
Sorry, my internet connection got cut in between. So I was talking about the right to the city and how the working class communities are systematically kept out of the urban planning processes. And this can be seen, of course, in the manner in which the housing is provided for the working class communities. For example, even as Bangalore expands into this bigger city, the working class communities are pushed to the peripheries. Their working class residential areas are pushed to the peripheries of the cities, where there is no proper infrastructure provided to them, be it water supply, be it sewage system, be it electricity connections. These are some things that are not at all provided to them, and they live on these private lands called Nelabadige slums, and where they pay, a certain amount of rent to the private landowner, and they're constantly under the threat of being evicted because they're at the mercy of these private landowners. They live in tin sheds, or they put tarpaulin tents, and that's how their entire families, which include small children, pregnant women, the elderly people, all of them have to live in. So of course, when the Bangalore flooding happened, and in fact September, of course, was the third largest, heaviest rainfall that Bangalore has received in 75 years. But even in May, Bangalore experienced a lot of rains, and even at that time, one of the construction compound walls had collapsed into one of the working class residential areas in Kodigehalli. And even then, we went as AICCTU, because we work with the workers who live in these areas, and we were able to fight for their housing rights and ensure that the BBMP provides some compensation so that they're able to rebuild their houses. Similarly, when we started getting calls about the flooding, and of course how the workers are losing their belongings, and the workers had to take temporary shelters in some temples as such, and all of that, we immediately wrote complaints to the BBMP, to the Social Welfare Department, to the Safai Karamchari Commission, because predominantly most of them were Paura Karmikas or sanitation workers, and of course we wrote to the Construction Workers Welfare Board as well, because a lot of them were construction workers as well. So through our intervention, the BBMP and the Social Welfare Department shifted them into marriage convention halls, and gave them some mattresses and bed sheets and some clothing, gave them some ration so that they'll be able to cook and things like that. And of course, they gave them some tarpaulin so that they can also start building some tents, which was at a slightly higher altitude in the same areas. And of course, AICCTU, along with the All India Students Association, AISA, we did a fundraiser, and we were able to gather money, and we were able to distribute about 200 relief kits, ration kits across several areas, and we were also able to distribute some 500 educational kits to the children across various working class areas in Mahadevpura. And through AICCTU, the question, of course, we work with Paura Karmikas, we work with the street vendors, we work with different service sector employees, etc. And the one thing that we have been consistently asking the government for, and in fact, even in the strike held by the Sanitation Workers Union in July this year, there was a 4-day strike across Karnataka, where the sanitation workers were asking for permanent jobs and increase in their minimum wages, etc. And one of the key demands, even at this protest, was that of housing and dignified housing for all Paura Karmikas across the state. And the government, in fact, assured us that they will extend the Gruha Bhagya scheme to the workers, etc. But this was a case in point when the workers who are living in abysmal living conditions require housing facilities. And of course, AICCTU is committed to fighting for the housing rights of these working class citizens. But in terms of the entire response of the state system, and how even the residents around Madhepura and residents in Bangalore reacted to this entire incident of Bangalore flooding, was when organizations had to push the government and raise concerns, especially on social media, through visuals of how the working class is suffering because their houses are inundated, and make representations before them and ask them to take some action. And until which time neither the media nor the state were ready to even focus on these working class families. And of course, it also highlights the entire aspect of how the bottom-up approach to urban planning is very important, how ward committees have to be functional, and how representatives of working class communities have to be part of these ward committees to be able to build an inclusive city. So all of us over here, including all of us who are attending this talk today, we should be fighting to build an inclusive city, to build inclusive urban spaces for all of us to live equally and in dignified manner. And of course, it's equally important when such incidents take place that we build solidarity with workers and workers' struggles. And that's when we will be able to hold the state accountable and to ensure that all of us live in harmony and peace. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Lekha. Tousif wants to add one more important point, and as he will be leaving soon, I will ask you both questions right after Tousif finishes talking. Yeah, thank you. Tousif, yeah, you can go ahead and talk.
Yeah, see, just I had forgotten one important point. Just for a comparison, just about a week back before the Bangalore flooding happened, there was a flooding in Ramnagaram also, which is just about 50-60 kilometers from Bangalore. In fact, what happened there was on the third day itself, still the rescue work was going on, the cleaning work was going on, all those things. Everybody got compensation because we were working there also. Because over there it's a local Kannada speaking crowd, plus the election is due next year and everybody wants to have their pie, whether it is Congress, BJP, JDS. And over there we had also done a low survey there. Not even about 500 houses were affected there, and in fact 1600 people got the compensation. And without asking, in fact, it was still cleaning of the streets, cleaning of the houses were going on. Third day, 1600 people got the compensation. Compared to that, here in Bangalore, which is not the case. That's what I thought. Just for the comparison sake, this was important. Just I wanted to add that.
Thank you so much, Tousif. Meera has a question in the chat box. It must be hard to build non-working class support for the argument that the corporate class is complicit in the mess, while they end up getting more attention during crisis and are treated with kid gloves when it comes to being held accountable. How do we address this challenge? It is an issue across cities. So this question is both for you, Tousif, and Lekha.
It's a very difficult task. Actually, we feel it is the actual moral decay of the society, the civil society, and the affluent class. They don't care at all. They don't even consider these people equal to them. In fact, if you see the conditions what they live, it is inhuman. You can't live. Even see, sorry to say, but most of the NGOs, other than just some handful of NGOs who regularly work, majority of the NGOs don't work in these areas as well, because there is a filth around, there is a stench all around, it is dirty. Because of that, many people, even the NGOs who are working, it is just like they just collect some buns, they just do some food distribution and all. Even the relief work, what happened in some NGOs did was mainly in the apartments and the villas only, where the people there itself, they had the access, they knew who to contact, how they can get help. It was not required there, but only a handful of NGOs work there. So unless and until more and more people are made aware of these crisis, these about these communities and the challenges what they face and the difficulties what they're facing, and unless that is people start understanding that and they feel for it, then only it can be done. Then only the government can be pressurized all those things, because only about a few hundred people doing something in a city of 1 crore plus, it doesn't matter unless this is prioritized. Maybe Lekha can add to it, but that is what I think.
Thanks, Tousif. Thanks, Meera, for that question. Of course, I mean, there are, this is a very huge and heavy question that you have asked. And in terms of, one, what, in fact, ESG and, several of us, Alternative Law Forum, and several of us have been fighting towards talking about how urban deprived communities or the working class communities have to be made part of the urban planning processes, be it the master plan, or even if you're building the metro rail, whether you're going to fund the bus or you're going to fund the metro rail system. These are questions, of course, that one needs to constantly keep raising. And of course, to be able to build the solidarity amongst movements. Like, for example, Paurakarmikas are predominantly women and they belong to the Dalit community. The street vendors who are fighting for an inclusive city also belong to the oppressed communities. They are the Bahujans, they are the destitute women, they are the widowed women who have escaped the drought and floods in their rural areas, or caste atrocities and sexual assault, and have come to the cities to earn a decent livelihood. So it's important to build these solidarity amongst movements, and for the residents of the city to be building a solidarity with these workers and their movements, and of course to be able to question the government and their inaction when it comes to not providing basic infrastructure for these working class communities. However, the fight is against the corporate greed and imperialism, as all of us have been fighting against. So yeah, thank you.
Lekha, one more question. So during the demolition drive, the government asked that all the apartments, whether it be working class settlements or the apartments, if they're built on the Raja Carways, that is a stormwater drain, it should be demolished. So all those who are living in the apartments, 1 day notice was given, but only the walls were demolished, and the residents and the owners were given notice that they have to vacate the apartment in the next few days, whereas those living in the working class settlements and the brick homes, they were just immediately asked to vacate. There are videos where a woman is just removing all her belongings, and they're keeping, and the JCB is coming and demolishing the house in which she's lived for 10 years without no problem. She was not told, she was aware that it was built on Rajikal Way, but there was no problem before. So how, as citizens, how do we help? How do we better help in these situations where the government is not even providing alternate shelter for them? And recently, the government has also announced that they would be giving 10,000 rupees as compensation to each family, working class settlements. But do you think that is enough? Because if a family has 8 members, the amount remains the same, and even if it's 2 members, it remains the same. So for a family who's lost everything in the floods, do you think that is enough? And even if relief is coming, all the work seems to be done by you and AICCTU and ISA, because you're the one going on the ground and doing a survey of all the people living there, so that all the people get it. So yeah, and Kishore is asking, how can we politicize the idea of complicity? Only awareness won't help. How can we think of education differently here?
Yeah. Thanks, Sachi. I think, in terms of compensation and all of that, it is something that the state government at least has been able to acknowledge that, okay, there is a certain amount of loss that has been sustained by the working class communities, and therefore we will provide compensation. Whether it is enough or not, that's a question that's debatable, of course. But in terms of what needs to be done, and it's ultimately how negligent the state is, and it's invariably an elitist government, right? And the history of, if you look at any of the slum demolitions in Bangalore or anywhere across India, this is how slum demolitions have occurred. You bring a JCB and you demolish the houses of working class, and that is something that a lot of us who are here in this call today have been fighting against, one in terms of demolition, eviction, and displacement. So I'm sure Meera and Bhargavi will be also able to answer this question better.
Thank you, Lekha. Okay, Suhas is saying, one way to sensitize the insensitive communities is to make them understand the concerns about health impacts. If the working people get enough basic amenities, the city cannot remain healthy medically as well as socially. It is certainly difficult to make the haves think, at least to the experience of COVID pandemic, maybe just out of fear of lockdown, and the corporates may come out to help us. Suhas, public health is a concern the political parties can also not deny. Thank you, Suhas. So thank you, Lekha and Tousif. Our next speaker is Bhargavi Rao. She is an independent researcher and educator. She is also a trustee and a senior fellow at Environment Support Group. She works at the intersections of community action with law, policy, planning, and governance. She represents ESG in various public interest litigation, advancing progressive. She has worked with CFA, PHFI, and APPI in the recent past. She teaches on many study programs in abroad and is a guest faculty at many universities and local institutions. Welcome, Bhargavi. On to you.
Yeah. Ellarigu namaskara. Thanks to NAPM for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts. So, talking about Bangalore and the floods out here, now Bengaluru planning hegagide anta artha madkondre, the original planning itself was largely based on a British model. So Malleshwaram and Baswangudi was largely, copied from the British model of what they had set up in the cantonment area. And if you look at that model itself, you can see that certain communities were kept out of all the main roads. And if you see who occupied the main roads and the main streets and the core of that area, obviously it was the dominant caste and classes. so historically, we have managed to keep religious minorities and other communities away from the main areas. They've always been discriminated. In that background, if we understand how the Bengaluru area was planned, the entire so-called IT corridor from the northeast to the southeast, when that area was planned, there were lots of cases that came up. Many farmers filed petitions. But of course, they lost, and it went on for very long in the courts. When that area was planned, they did not follow any of the provisions of law, particularly the Town and Country Planning Act, which provides excellent guidelines for newer areas when it is built. Building bylaws were not followed. And then the apartment complexes and such commercial complexes were removed from the purview of the EIA. We've attended several public consultations as part of many of the apartment complexes that were coming in and around Bangalore between 2000 to 2005. But once these apartment complexes were removed from the purview of public consultation, the possibility of hearing local voices were gone. As a result, Bangalore engulfed a whole lot of villages that were on the periphery. So once you don't hear the local voices, you don't even know where you're building, right? So had we only listened to those voices, we would know a little bit more about these lakes, the Rajakaluways, what happens when there is heavy rain, so on and so forth. We never gave them a chance. And once the IT corridor did come up, like I said, there was absolutely no due diligence by the people who occupied these complexes. That again is such a shame for a city which boasts of science and technology. We have screwed up our waste management system. We have not done a great job of our water system. We've again messed up with our groundwater. And now we have messed up with the landscape planning itself. How could we go wrong when, we are all the time boasting about science and technology and, we can write code for the rest of the world. We couldn't figure this simple fact of water flows from a higher area to a lower area. This is like mind blowing. Then once this new area came up and once the newer villages were engulfed, they did not bother to create a network of roads which were well connected. They did not give regard to any of the court orders because many of the court orders had already been there. Many court appointed committees had already given recommendations. There was so much to abide by, but none of that was followed because again, it was, the hubris of the IT and the BT thinking that they knew what they were doing and nobody could question them. And the real estate giants who were catering to them, obviously, put law and court orders and everything under their seats. As a result, that entire area has been built in such a way that, they could work there, live there, what do they call it? Live, work, play and strike deals. So that was what they built the city for. That part of the city was built predominantly for that. And then every IT company and the BT company gave plenty of interest-free loans to buy cars and second homes and third homes probably. And with all the 2 and 3 cars per family, they obviously needed multi-storied parking. So they went underground 2 floors, 3 floors just for parking, and they cemented the whole thing. Common sense that water needs to percolate down did not, it failed there. And it just contributed to the mess today. So like both Lekha and Tousif have shared, who's bearing the brunt of this is unfortunately the poor. it is the poor who bear the brunt of the waste management system in Bangalore. We dump that waste in Mavalipura, Mandur, and a whole lot of other villages. It is predominantly Dalit villages. And here it is again the poor people, the religious minorities, the Dalits again. And when it comes to taking action, we've already heard it is threatening the poor, saying that you've encroached, and bulldozing those homes and not doing anything about the rich while they sit plumb. And they obviously got away with it because they had that money. I was told that every hotel in that area ran at 30 to 40,000 rupees per day per, during that time. And they managed to move into those hotels. But what about the poor? Their entire homes were flooded. And what does it take for these homes to rebuild themselves, to figure things out and start from the scratch? And, that again puts them into debt. And that with all the flooding that has taken place, somebody has already raised the issue of public health. We are in for cholera and jaundice and malaria and a whole lot of other diseases. And, the Surat-like situation could also be created with, infections of Yersinia and plague and things like that. But who's going to bear the brunt of it? Again, it is the poor. So what is the way forward? I think it's time people come out on the streets and demand that we fix our local governance. Our local governance has never existed. Several court orders have ensured that ward committees be set up, but we all know that, elections have not been conducted for the last 3 years. The city is running without a mayor. It is largely the bureaucrats who are running the city. So in a situation like this, I think everybody has to understand how governance works, and we should all be on the streets demanding that we fix our local governance. Every ward has to do analysis of its waste, of its water, of its lakes, of who's sitting on the Rajakaluwe, and be it a minister, be it a bureaucrat, be it somebody very influential, I think some action has to be taken. If it is a Rajakaluwe, I think we need to respect that and, take the right decision. When it comes to rehabilitating the poor, I would like to quote the example of Subramanyapura Kere, where people who were, I would not call them encroachers. When you displace them twice or thrice in their lives, obviously they have to settle somewhere. So many people had settled in and around Subramanyapura Kere, and the court ordered that they have to be rehabilitated if that lake has to be rejuvenated. So accordingly, the Karnataka Slum Development Board did construct apartment complexes for them, and a few of them moved, a few of them did not move. Recently, we did a survey of that region and found that that entire block of apartments are so badly constructed. All the roofs leak, all the toilets leak. So it's a 4-story building. Somebody's toilet water drips into your home. How does it feel to live in a house like that? Why is it that there are no checks and balances? Why isn't there any monitoring and evaluation of these buildings? Waste is never picked up. For the last so many years, waste has not been picked up, and it lies all over the place. There is sewage flowing in and around those apartment complexes. Obviously, there is no water. A tanker comes every now and then, or there is one tanker from a constructed tank from where people have to collect water. It is not great quality, but they have no choice. So with poor water, bad living conditions, epidemic disease levels are always at the risk, and these people are forever in debt. And in that vicious cycle, we will never get them out of that vicious circle. Day after day, they are scavenging for their leftover and restarting their life. This is like really horrible. And the fact that a large section of the cities just ignores this, it's blind to this, is not acceptable at all. So these stories have to be made more public. A lot more public consultations have to be held. A lot more ward level events have to be held so that people come out and understand how governance works. It's only when people understand how governance works that they will realize what has gone wrong with the city. And at least then probably, there is hope that some signs will flow in to our planning. So with that, I will stop. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bhargavi. I would request Vijay to translate this in Kannada.
Yeah, sure. ಸಂಕ್ಷಿಪ್ತವಾಗಿ ಹೇಳ್ತೀನಿ. ಈಗ ಭಾರ್ಗವಿ ಅವರು ಹಲವಾರು ಸಂಘ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಗಳ ಜೊತೆ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ ಹಾಗೂ ಪಾಠ ಹೇಳ್ಕೊಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಮುಖ್ಯವಾಗಿ ನಗರಾಭಿವೃದ್ಧಿ ಮತ್ತು ನಗರದ ಕಾರ್ಯೋಜನೆಗಳು ಹೆಂಗ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು, ಪ್ಲಾನಿಂಗ್ ಹೆಂಗಿರ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಈ ವಿಷಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾತಾಡುವಾಗ ಅವರು ಹಂಚ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದ ಕೆಲವು ಮುಖ್ಯಾಂಶಗಳು ಏನಪ್ಪಾ ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಒಂದು ಈ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರಿನ ಬೆಳವಣಿಗೆ ಆಗಿರೋದು ತುಂಬಾನೇ ದಿಢೀರಂತ ಆಗಿರೋದು, ಅದು ನಿಜಾನೇ ಹೌದು. ಬಟ್ ಅದಕ್ಕಿಂತ ಹೆಚ್ಚಾಗಿ ಆ ದಿಢೀರಂತ ಆಗಿದ್ದಕ್ಕಿಂತ ಹೆಚ್ಚಾಗಿ ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಏನ್ ಮಾದರಿ ಉಪಯೋಗಿಸಿದ್ರು, ಅವ್ರು ಬ್ರಿಟಿಷರ್ ಏನ್ ಉಪಯೋಗಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರು ಅದೇ ತರ ಹೆಂಗೆ ಬನಶಂಕರಿ ಮತ್ತು ಬಸವನಗುಡಿ ಮತ್ತು ಮಲ್ಲೇಶ್ವರನ ಕಂಟೋನ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಅನ್ನು ಕಾಪಿ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೆಂಗೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಮೈಸೂರು ರಾಜ್ಯದ ಸಮಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು, ಹಂಗೇನೆ ಸ್ವತಂತ್ರ ಭಾರತದಲ್ಲೂ ಈ ಒಂದು ಮಾದರಿಯನ್ನೇ ಬಳಸ್ಕೊಂಡು ನಮ್ಮ ನಗರಗಳನ್ನ ಬೆಳೆಸ್ಕೊಂಡು ಬಂದಿದೀವಿ. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಇದು ಒಂದು ಮುಖ್ಯವಾದ ಒಂದು ಕೊರತೆ. ಯಾಕೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಆ ಬ್ರಿಟಿಷರು ಹೆಂಗೆ ಜನಗಳನ್ನ ಕೇಳ್ದೇನೆ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಹೆಂಗ್ ಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಅವರು ಊಹಾಪೋಹಗಳ ಮೇಲೆ ಕಟ್ಟಿದ್ರು, ಹಂಗೇನೆ ನಾವೂನು ಅಲ್ಲಿನ ಸ್ಥಳೀಯ ಜನಗಳ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಅವರ ಆರೈಕೆಗಳ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ತಗೊಳ್ದೇನೆ, ಅದನ್ನ ಒಂದು ಲೆಕ್ಕಕ್ಕೆ ತಗೊಳ್ದೇನೆ ನಾವು ಇದನ್ನ ಬೆಳೆಸ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗಿದೀವಿ. ಅದಷ್ಟೇ ಅಲ್ಲದೆ ಈ ದೊಡ್ಡ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಕಂಪನಿಗಳು ಇದೆಲ್ಲ ಒಂದು ಸ್ಥಾಪನೆ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಂಗೆನೆ ಹೆಂಗೆ ನಿಯಮಾವಳಿಗಳನ್ನ ಗಾಳಿಗೆ ಬೀಸಾಕ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಹೆಂಗ್ ಬೇಕೋ ಹಂಗೆ ಎಕ್ಕಮರ ಕಟ್ಕೊಂಡಿರೋದು ನಾವು ಇವಾಗ್ಲೂ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಆ ಕಡೆ ಯಾಕೆಲ್ಲ ಓಡಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಗೊತ್ತಾಗತ್ತೆ. ದೊಡ್ಡ ಬೀದಿ ಇರುತ್ತೆ, ಒಂದ್ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಮುಂದೆ ಹೋಗಿದ ನಂತರ ಒಂದ್ ಸಣ್ಣ ಬೀದಿ ಆಗೋಗುತ್ತೆ. ಯಾಕೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದ್ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಕಾಂಪ್ಲೆಕ್ಸ್ನವರು ಕಾಂಪೌಂಡ್ ಕಟ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಹೀಗೆ ಈ ಹಲವಾರು ದೊಡ್ಡ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಕಂಪನಿಗಳು ಬಂದು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಶ್ರಮಿಕ ವರ್ಗದ ಒಂದು ಏನು ಒಂದು ಲೆಕ್ಕನೇ ತಗೊಳ್ದೇನೆ ಹೆಂಗೆ ಸರ್ಕಾರ ಮತ್ತು ಈ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಕಂಪನಿಗಳು ಹೇಗೆ ಸೇರ್ಕೊಂಡು ನಗರದ ಒಂದು ವ್ಯಾಖ್ಯಾನನೇ ಚೆದರ ಹಾಕ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಸೊ ಈ ಒಂದು ಪರಿಸ್ಥಿತಿನಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವ್ ಏನ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು, ಹೆಂಗ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳುವಾಗ ಭಾರ್ಗವಿ ಅವ್ರು ಹೇಳೋದೇನು ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಮುಖ್ಯವಾಗಿ ಜನಗಳು ಬೀದಿಗಿಳಿಲೇಬೇಕು. ಈ ಜನಗಳು ಇವಾಗ ನಾವು ಇಲ್ಲ ನಾವು ಇದ್ರಲ್ಲೇ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡಿರ್ತೀವಿ, ಹೆಂಗಿದ್ಯೋ ಹಂಗೆ ನಡೆಸ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗ್ತೀವಿ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನಡೆಯೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಈ ಹವಾಮಾನದ ವೈಪರೀತ್ಯ ಹಾಗೂ ಈ ಪ್ರವಾಹಗಳೆಲ್ಲ ಬರ್ತಿರೋದು ಬರೀ ಒಂದು ನಗರಾಭಿವೃದ್ಧಿ ಅಲ್ದೇನೆ ಒಂದು ನಮ್ಮ ಅಭಿವೃದ್ಧಿ ಏನು ಡೆವಲಪ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಪ್ಯಾರಾಡೈಮ್ ಅಂತೀವೋ ಅದನ್ನ ಒಂದು ಎದುರಾಕೋಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ. ಹಾಗೂ ನಮ್ಮ ಹಕ್ಕುಗಳಿಗೆ ನಾವೇ ನಿಂತು ಜಗಳಾಡ್ಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ, ಪಡ್ಕೋಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ ಅಂದ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಆ ದಿಕ್ಕಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಮುಖ್ಯವಾಗಿ ಹಂಚ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರು. ಅದಷ್ಟೇ ಅಲ್ಲದೆ ಸರ್ಕಾರ ಈ ನಿಯಮಾವಳಿಗಳನ್ನ ನಿಜವಾಗ್ಲೂ ಏನಂತಾರೆ ಎನ್ಫೋರ್ಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು. ಅದನ್ನ ಇನ್ನೂ ನಾವು ಈಗಿನ ಒಂದು ಪರಿಸ್ಥಿತಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಜನಗಳಿಗೆ, ಅದರಲ್ಲೂ ಶ್ರಮಿಕ ವರ್ಗಕ್ಕೆ, ಹೆಂಗೆ ಬಡವರಿಗೆ ಹೆಂಗೆ ತಮ್ಮ ಹಕ್ಕುಗಳಿಗೆ ಹೋರಾಟದಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಬೆಂಬಲವಾಗಿರ್ಬೋದು ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನ ಮುಖ್ಯವಾಗಿ ನಾವು ಗಮನದಲ್ಲಿ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡು ನಮ್ಮ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಈ ಪ್ರಗತಿಪರ ವರ್ಗದವರು ನಾವೆಲ್ಲರೂ NAPM ಜನಾಂದೋಲನ ರಾಷ್ಟ್ರೀಯ ಸಮನ್ವಯನೇ ಆಗ್ಲಿ ಅಥವಾ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಸೇರಿರೋ ಅಂತ ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಸೇರ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೆಂಗೆ ನಾವು ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು ಅನ್ನೋದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆನೂ ಗಮನ ಹರಿಸ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಭಾರ್ಗವಿ ಅವರು ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು. ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು. ಭಾರ್ಗವಿ ಅವರೇ, ನೀವೇ ಏನಾದ್ರು ಇನ್ನೊಂದಷ್ಟು ನಾನು ಬಿಟ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದ್ರೆ ದಯವಿಟ್ಟು ಸೇರಿಸ್ಬಿಡಿ.
ಇಲ್ಲ ನೀವ್ ಸಂಕ್ಷಿಪ್ತವಾಗಿ ಎಲ್ಲ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರಿ. ಇನ್ನೊಂದ್ ಪಾಯಿಂಟ್ ನಾನು ಆಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕಂತ ಆಸೆ ಪಡ್ತೀನಿ. ಏನಂದ್ರೆ, ಸೊ ಈಗ EST ಹೋರಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರೋ ಒಂದು ಹೈಕೋರ್ಟ್ ಪೆಟಿಷನ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಪಬ್ಲಿಕ್ ಇಂಟ್ರೆಸ್ಟ್ ಲಿಟಿಗೇಷನ್ ಈ ಕೆರೆಗಳ ಬಗ್ಗೆ 2012 ಅಲ್ಲೇನೆ ಒಂದು ಒಳ್ಳೆ ಆರ್ಡರ್ ಬಂತು. ಆ ಆರ್ಡರ್ ಬೇಸಿಕಲಿ ಏನ್ ಹೇಳ್ತಂದ್ರೆ, ಎಲ್ಲ ಕಡೆ ಡಿಸ್ಟ್ರಿಕ್ಟ್ ಲೇಕ್ ಪ್ರೊಟೆಕ್ಷನ್ ಕಮಿಟಿ ಸೆಟಪ್ ಆಗಿರ್ಬೇಕು. ಮತ್ತೆ NK ಪಾಟೀಲ್ ಕಮಿಟಿ ರಿಪೋರ್ಟ್ ಏನಿತ್ತು ಅದನ್ನ ಲಿಟ್ರಲಿ ಕಾಪಿ ಪೇಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿತ್ತು ಕೋರ್ಟ್ ಫೈನಲ್ ಆರ್ಡರ್ ನಲ್ಲಿ. And the recommendations of the NK Patil committee report basically say, simple things of how a lake has to be rejuvenated, what kind of plants should be planted, how the desilting process has to take place, what kind of buffer zones have to be left, so on and so forth. ಅದನ್ನ ನೋಡಿದ್ರೆ ನಾವು ಯಾವುದೇ ಒಂದು ಲೇಕ್ that has been rejuvenated has not followed the provisions of this NK Patil committee report. Many of the lakes that got rejuvenated from 2013 onwards with a lot of CSR money have done what they think has been right. And, popularly it is called the soup bowl model. So many of the lakes in the IT corridor area are soup bowls. ಒಂದು ಕೆರೆ ಅದು ಒಂದು ಬಟ್ಲ್ ತರ ಇರೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಆ ಕೆರೆ ಹೇಗಿರುತ್ತೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಒಂದ್ ಕಡೆ ಆಳ ಇರತ್ತೆ, ಇನ್ನೊಂದ್ ಕಡೆ ಶಾಲೋ ಇರತ್ತೆ. And these lakes have never been meant to be perennial. They are only seasonal. The regions in southern India receive rainfall from May onwards. So May to September male baratte. The water is held in these lakes. Then again in November, December, we receive a little rainfall. Then April, a little bit of, the April showers. In between January to say May, it's a little dry. And that's when local communities use these lake beds, the shallow areas, either for grazing or to grow one or two short, quick crops like chilies and other vegetables. But the lakes that got rejuvenated created a soup bowl model because we had to create a jogging track and a walking track and make it look nice for all these fancy apartments which have all their infinity lakes on, on the rooftop, so that they could get a good view of the lake. We fail to understand the science of how these lakes were created. That is like, again, unacceptable. And how could a science-based community go wrong in this? If you look at many of the projects that most of the ITBT people do, they do so much of due diligence, right? Why didn't they do a due diligence of these things? Forget about building their homes on lake beds. Even when it came to CSR funded lake rejuvenation programs, they have created soup bowls of all these lakes. And that could have been one of the factors of why, whatever happened in that area. So I just wanted to add that one point. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bhargavi. Dviji, would you want to translate what she said?
ಇಲ್ಲ, ಸಾಕಷ್ಟು ಕನ್ನಡ ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಹೇಳಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಪರವಾಗಿಲ್ಲ, ಮುಂದುವರ್ಸೋಣ. ಸಮಯದ ಒಂದು ಕೊರತೆಯನ್ನು ನೋಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋಣ. ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು.
Okay, thank you so much. Our next speaker is P Singh. He is a civic, environment, and political activist living in Bengaluru. He has been active on the issues of lake protection, rejuvenation, rainwater management, wastewater treatment, solid waste management, traffic and pedestrian mobility issues of Bengaluru for over 15 years. He spends his maximum time these days in supporting the ongoing movements to secure remunerative prices for farmers and to enable them to become dairy. Through a consortium called All India Kisan Sangharsh Coordination Committee and Samyukta Kisan Morcha, of which Jai Kisan Andolan, founded by Yogendra Yadav, is a very important constituent. I request P Singh to present his talk.
Thank you, Sachi. Thank you, NAPM. So my community, Rainbow Drive in Bengaluru, is one of the affected communities in this rain. Do you want me to talk about what went wrong here? What do I need to focus in my talk? I can go according to what is best useful here. Because
yes,
we are one of the, I have all the first-hand experience of working with the community and facing the brunt as well. So from this May onwards, this rain in the rainy season, we got flooded 4 times. Twice in May and twice in September, rather around 30th of August and 4th and 5th of September. With every flooding, things got worse because we have 2 lakes behind our colony. One is called Junasandra Lake and one is called Halanayakanhalli Lake. The last flooding, which happened on 4th of September, 5th of September, which lasted for quite a few days, this was kind of a havoc for the community because the water in many houses went up to 4 feet, and we had only one entry and exit, and people were logged for several days. They were not able to go in and go out. So this is what happened during this rain. The root cause for all this is that this community was set up about 25 years back by creating a colony on the paddy fields. And the paddy fields naturally had some drains, some irrigation drains, which were flowing through the paddy fields. And probably when a lot of rains happen, it used to flow to the following lake as well. And the following lake is behind Wipro, which is called Solkere. But now in between these 2 lakes, which is Halanayakanhalli Lake and Junasandra Lake, is Sarjapur Road, which is dividing these 2, and we do not have enough pathways and culverts taking the water from these 2 lakes up to the Solkere. So since our colony was built 25 years back and rest of the city, rest of the surrounding areas, they grew over the period of time. Everyone has filled up the land and then built on top of all the pathways. And now our colony is sitting on the lowest area and it's getting flooded. So since our colony was, when it was set up, it was under the Gram Panchayat. The builder took the sanction plan from the Gram Panchayat. Gram Panchayats were lackluster. They did not really see how the water flow from the lakes up onto the next lake. So there are all the buildings have come up, all the residential layouts have come up, individual houses have come up, and we hardly have any pathway from these 2 lakes connecting to the other lake. And this is what is causing the flooding in this area. We have been working with the MLA, with the other authorities, BBMP, local bodies from last 4 or 5 months. We have been engaging with them to find a solution. MLA visited us in the month of May when we were flooded a couple of times. Then we engaged with them, and MLA visited us and he proposed certain solutions. Some work is going on to address the issue, but it'll take time, and the comprehensive handling would need that we address the rejuvenation of these lakes as well, and then proper management of the lakes. Both the lakes have sluice gates, but these sluice gates are not managed. If those sluice gates are operated, then probably we can avoid total flooding of the gates of the lakes during the rainy season. But that has not happened. I have been living in this area from last 20 years, and I have only seen that the lakes are continuously encroached upon. They are filled up. There's no desilting happening of the lakes. There are roads that have come up on the lake bed, so the total size of the lake has reduced, and the holding capacity also has reduced. And in fact, Junasandra Lake has become totally a flat forest. It has absolutely no holding capacity. And also since a lot of construction is happening, so all the open areas earlier which used to hold some water, allow it to percolate down, now is totally cemented. So all the water runs off and it comes to Rainbow Drive because we are the lowest in this area. So we are kind of facing the brunt of it, and it will only keep increasing with every passing year because we still have a lot of areas which are being constructed, and as soon as they start, the residents start living there, they also start consuming a lot of water, and that water again is dropped into the stormwater drains. That becomes additional water that these stormwater drains need to carry. So for us, it's a great concern, and we do not see any comprehensive handling or thinking that is going on into the planning of this. We plan to engage with the authorities to get the lakes rejuvenated. We want alternate pathways to connect these two lakes, which are behind our colony, to the lake which is behind Wipro. But it's not an easy thing. Hopefully the elections are around the corner, and we are hoping that the government would listen. I heard there was a meeting today where Bengaluru Apartment Federation was called. A couple of representatives from our colony also had gone there. So government probably to because there is a lot of coverage that has happened of these floods, particularly our colony and the IT corridor. So government is listening. Hopefully something happens, something gets addressed. But yep, as I think Bhargavi was saying, a lot of engagement by the citizens has to happen. The ward committees have to become functional. The voters need to ensure we elect good representatives who listen to us, who care for citizens, who care for the environmental issues, the lakes, etc. And then only, and we need to be vigilant. Most of the time, the lakes, etc., are getting encroached even as we speak. So we need to be vigilant. We need to protect the lakes. We need to work for the rejuvenation of the lakes, etc. And that is when I think we would be able to make a peaceful living. As of now, it's a great challenge ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Could you also elaborate more on the role of politicians, how we can hold them accountable, both those in power and in opposition?
See, ultimately, when a city develops, it is the government which is supposed to be taking care of all these things. We, people like us who came from outside and bought a piece of land, paid the registration amount, paid the taxes from last 20 years, we hardly know about what needs to be done. It is the authorities. If it is under the panchayat, the people in the panchayat, they need to be held accountable if they have not taken care of what they are supposed to do. If it falls under BBMP, then the BBMP needs to be held accountable. But unfortunately, no one holds these people accountable, the authorities, the politicians, and ultimately it's the citizen who bears the brunt. So somehow there's total immunity for these people who sign, who sit in the offices and sign on the papers, give the approvals to these layouts, to apartment complexes and others, and then the unsuspecting buyers fall prey to this. So since there is no punishment to these people, they go scot-free, and ultimately it's the buyer who faces all the brunt. So I think either the courts have to intervene and hold them accountable, unless that The builders, the politicians, they go totally scot-free. They are not the ones who they build it, they sell it, they go away, and residents are the ones who are facing the brunt. So I think somehow the courts need to intervene, or some public interest litigation has to be there to hold these people accountable.
Thank you so much. I would request Twiji to translate. Before that, audience, please send in your questions via the chat function. We would be taking in questions after the translation is done. Thank you.
P Singh ಅವರು ಒಂದು ಮುಖ್ಯವಾದ ಒಂದು ದೃಷ್ಟಿಕೋನ ತಂದಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಸಭೆಗೆ. ಅವರು ರೈನ್ಬೋ ಡ್ರೈವ್ ಎನ್ಕ್ಲೇವ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಇದ್ದಿದ್ದವರು, ಹೆಸರು ಸರಿಯಾಗಿ ಜ್ಞಾಪಕ ಬರಲಿಲ್ಲ, ರೈನ್ಬೋ ಡ್ರೈವ್ ಅಂತಾನೆ ಏನೋ ಇದ್ದಿದ್ದು. ಸೊ ಈ ಪ್ರವಾಹದಲ್ಲಿ ಅವರ ಒಂದು ಕಾಲೋನಿನೂ ಸುಮಾರು ನೀರು ತುಂಬಿಕೊಂಡು ಅವ್ರಿಗೂ ಸುಮಾರು ತೊಂದರೆಗಳಾಯ್ತು. ಕೆರೆ ಪಕ್ಕದಲ್ಲೇ ಇದೆ, ಕೆರೆಯಿಂದ ಬರ್ತಿರೋ ನೀರಿಗೆ ಎಲ್ಲೂ ನಿಕಾಸಿ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ ಭಾರ್ಗವಿಯವರು ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ಮೊದಲು ಒಂದು ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು, ಸೂಪ್ ಬೌಲ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಬಟ್ಲಿನ ಆಕಾರದಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ, ಒಳ್ಳೆ ಬೊಂಬೆ ಇದರಲ್ಲಿ ಆಟ ಸಾಮಾನುಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾಡ್ದಂಗೆ ಪ್ರಾಜೆಕ್ಟ್ಗಳು ಮಾಡ್ದಂಗೆ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ ಅಂತ. ಕೆರೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಯಾವಾಗ್ಲೂ ಒಂದು ವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆ ಇರುತ್ತೆ, ಆ ವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆನ ಮುರಿದು ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರೋದ್ರನ್ನ KP ಸಿಂಗ್ ಅವರು ತಮ್ಮ ಅನುಭವದಿಂದ ಹಂಚ್ಕೊಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಹೇಗೆ ಕೆರೆಗೆ ನೀರ್ ಬಂದ್ರೂ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಹೊರಗಡೆ ಹೋಗೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಎಲ್ಲೂ ಜಾಗ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಒಂದು ದೊಡ್ಡ ತಲೆನೋವಾಗ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದೆ. ಯಾಕೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಇವರ ಒಂದು ಕಾಲೋನಿ ಬಂದು, ಇವರೊಂದು ಅಪಾರ್ಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಕಾಂಪ್ಲೆಕ್ಸ್ ಬಂದು ಒಂದ್ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಇದು ನೆಲದ ಮಟ್ಟ ಒಂಚೂರು ಕೆಳಗಿದೆ. ಸೊ ಕೆರೆ ನೆರೆಹೊರೆಯಿಂದ ಹೋಲಿಸಿದ್ರೆ, ಸೊ ಕೆರೆಯಿಂದ ನೀರ್ ಹರ್ಕೊಂಡ್ ಬಂದ್ರೆ ಇವ್ರ ಏರಿಯಾನಲ್ಲೇ ಬಂದು ನಿಂತ್ಕೊಳತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಅಲ್ಲಿನ ಇದು ವಿಧಾಯಕರ ಜೊತೆ ಮಾತಾಡಿದರೆ, ಅವ್ರು ಬಂದು ನೋಡಿ ಏನೋ ಒಂದಷ್ಟು ಪರಿಹಾರ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು, ಬಟ್ ಅದರಿಂದ ಏನೂ ಪ್ರಯೋಜನ ಆಗ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ, ಅದೆಲ್ಲೂ ಮುಂದುವರೆದಿಲ್ಲ. ಇವಾಗ ಈ ತರ ಆಗಿದೆ. ಸೊ ಈ ತರ ಆಗೋದ್ರಿಂದ ಯಾಕೆ ಹಿಂಗ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ಅನ್ನೋದಕ್ಕೆ ನಾವು ಏನ್ ಗಮನಿಸ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಈ ಅಪ್ರೂವಲ್ಗಳು ಕೊಟ್ಟವರು, ಈ ಅಧಿಕಾರಿಗಳೇ ಆಗಿರ್ಬೋದು, ಇಲ್ಲ ಈ ಕಟ್ಟಡಗಳನ್ನ ಕಟ್ಟಿದವರು ಏನು ಪ್ಲಾನ್ ಮಾಡ್ಯಾರೋ ಅದನ್ನ ಸ್ಯಾಂಕ್ಷನ್ ಮಾಡಿದವರು, ಆ ಪ್ಲಾನ್ ಮಾಡಿದ ಒಂದು ಆರ್ಕಿಟೆಕ್ಟ್ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಆ ಸಿವಿಲ್ ಇಂಜಿನಿಯರ್ಗಳಿರ್ಬೋದು, ಅಥವಾ ಆ ಡೆವಲಪ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಕಂಪ್ನಿ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಅವ್ರಗಳದ್ದು ಏನಿದೆ ಇದ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ಹೊಣೆ ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನು ನಾವು ಪ್ರಶ್ನಿಸ್ಬೇಕು. ಈ ತರ ನಾವು ಬರೀ ಸರ್ಕಾರದ್ದು ಅಂತ ನಾವು ಇವಾಗಿನ ಸರ್ಕಾರದ ಬಗ್ಗೆನೇ ಅಲ್ದೇನೆ ಈ ಒಂದು ಸ್ಯಾಂಕ್ಷನ್ ಮಾಡಿದ ಅಧಿಕಾರಿಗಳು ಯಾರು ಅನ್ನೋದ್ರದ್ದು ದಾಖಲಾತಿಗಳು ಇದ್ದೇ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಯಾವ ಸರ್ಕಾರದ ಸಮಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಇದು ನಡೀತು, ಯಾವ ಮಂತ್ರಿಗಳಿದ್ರು, ಯಾವ ವಿಧಾಯಕರಿದ್ರು, ಇದನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ನಾವು ಗಮನಿಸ್ಕೊಂಡು ಅವ್ರನ್ನು ಅವ್ರ ಜವಾಬ್ದಾರಿನೂ ನಾವು ಎತ್ತು ತೋರಿಸ್ಬೇಕು ಅನ್ನೋದು ಹಂಚ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರು KP ಸಿಂಗ್ ಅವರು. ಮತ್ತಿನ್ನೊಂದು ವಿಷಯ ಅವ್ರು ಹಂಚ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದು, ಮುಖ್ಯವಾದ ವಿಷಯ ಅನ್ಸಿದ್ದು, ಹೊರಗಿಂದ ವಲಸೆ ಬರ್ತಾರೆ ಜನ, ಸಾಕಷ್ಟು ಅವರಿಂದ ಆರ್ಥಿಕ ವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಸುಧಾರಣೆ ಬರುತ್ತೆ. ಆದ್ರೆ ಆ ವಲಸೆ ಬಂದಿದ್ದ ಜನ ತಾವು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಹಣ ಖರ್ಚು ಮಾಡಿ ಒಂದು ಮನೆ ಕೊಂಡ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿನ ನಮ್ಮ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರು ಅಂತ ಅನ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿನ ಒಂದು ನೆಲದ ಒಂದು ಅರಿವು ಇರೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಯಾವ ಕಡೆಯಿಂದ ನೀರ್ ಬರುತ್ತೆ, ಎಲ್ಲಿದೆ ಕೆರೆ, ಏನು ಎತ್ತ ಅಂತ ಅಷ್ಟೊಂದು ಗಮನಿಸ್ದೇನೆ ಅವರು ಜನಗಳನ್ನ ನಂಬಿ, ಜನಗಳನ್ನ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಈ ಮಾರಾಟ ಮಾಡ್ತಿರೋಂತ ಡೆವಲಪರ್ನೇ ಆಗಿರ್ಬೋದು, ಅಥವಾ ಆ ಸ್ಯಾಂಕ್ಷನ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಂತ ಅಧಿಕಾರಿಗಳನ್ನೇ ಆಗಿರ್ಬೋದು, ಅವ್ರನ್ನ ನಂಬಿ ಇವರು ತಮ್ಮ ಕಷ್ಟಪಟ್ಟು ಸಂಪಾದನೆ ಮಾಡಿರುವಂತ ಹಣನ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಬಂಡವಾಳದ ತರ ಹಾಕೊಂಡು ಅವರು ಮನೆಗಳು ತಗೊಂಡಿರ್ತಾರೆ, ಸಾಲಗಳು ತಗೊಂಡಿರ್ತಾರೆ. ಸೊ ಈ ತರ ಇದ್ದಾಗ್ಲೂ ನಾವು ಇವಾಗ ನಮ್ಮ ಕಷ್ಟದಿಂದ ಸಂಪಾದನೆ ಮಾಡಿದ ಹಣದಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಕಟ್ಟಿರುವಂತ ನಾವು ತಗೊಂಡಿರುವಂತ ಮನೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಇರಕ್ಕಾಗದೇ ಇರೋಂಗ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ಸೊ ಅಂತದ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಹೆಂಗೆ ಇದನ್ನ ಪರಿಹಾರ ಮಾಡೋದು? ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ನ್ಯಾಯಾಂಗಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಗ್ಲೇಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ ನಾವು. ಅದರಲ್ಲೂ ಪಬ್ಲಿಕ್ ಇಂಟ್ರೆಸ್ಟ್ ಲಿಟಿಗೇಷನ್ಗಳನ್ನು ಹಾಕ್ಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ. ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ಇದು ಬರೀ ಒಬ್ರು ಇಬ್ರು ಅಲ್ಲ, ಇದು ತೊಂದ್ರೆ ಹಲವಾರು ಈ ಒಂದು ಇಲಾಖೆನಲ್ಲಿ ಇರುವಂತ ಹಲವಾರು ಮನೆಗಳದ್ದು, ಹಲವಾರು ಜನಗಳದ್ದು ಇದು ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಆದ್ರಿಂದ, ಸಮಸ್ಯೆ ಆದ್ರಿಂದ ಇದನ್ನ ನಾವು ಪಬ್ಲಿಕ್ ಇಂಟ್ರೆಸ್ಟ್ ಲಿಟಿಗೇಷನ್ ಮೂಲಕನೂ ಇದನ್ನ ನೋಡ್ಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಮತ್ತೆ ಕೊನೆ ವಿಷಯವಾಗಿ ಅವರು KP ಸಿಂಗ್ ಅವ್ರು ಹಂಚ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದೇನು ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಈ ರಾಜಕಾಲುವೆಗಳು ಇದೆಲ್ಲ ಇವಾಗ ನಾವು ಪುನಃ ಹೆಂಗ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು, ಹೆಂಗ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನು ನಾವು ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ. ಈ ಕೆರೆಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಬೀದಿಗಳು ಬಂದ್ಬಿಡ್ತಾ ಇದಾವೆ. ಸರ್ಕಾರನೇ ಕೆರೆ ಬದಿನಲ್ಲೇನೆ ಇವಾಗ ಬೀದಿ ಹಾಸಕ್ ಶುರು ಮಾಡ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಸೊ ಅಂಥದನ್ನ ನಾವು ತಡೆಗಟ್ಟಬೇಕು. ಅದಕ್ಕೆಲ್ಲ ಜನಗಳು ಒಂದ್ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಸೇರ್ಬೇಕು, ಜನ ಸಮುದಾಯಗಳು ಇದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಕಾಳಜಿ ತಗೊಂಡು ಏನಾದ್ರು ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಕರೆ ನೀಡ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. Sachi, over to you.
Thank you so much, Vijay. We will wait for people to send in their questions. Also, coming back to Bhargavi's talk about how the living conditions in the working class settlements is very bad. The last time I visited the Munikola working settlement, I found that people were using worm infested water for domestic use, and they were storing rainwater in the drum to drink. And there is no support from the government as well. They're sending a water can, not a tanker. They're sending a water can, and they have to pay 15 rupees. The workers have to pay 15 rupees to get it. And they don't seem to be, the workers cannot afford to buy it every day. What do you think about this? I mean, the situation is so bad that they can't even drink, they can't even get enough drinking water, and for domestic use and for personal use.
Sorry, was that for me?
Bhargavi, yes.
Yeah. See, the issue of water again is a very inhuman situation here in most cities across the country today, because Kaveri water comes at a very high cost. First of all, it's 100 kilometers away. Much of the energy and the money that is being spent on that is only to lift water from there and bring it to Bangalore. So if you see, it is mostly the rich areas that are getting 24/7 water supply in Bangalore. A large section of Bangalore depends on groundwater, and the poorer neighborhoods have to depend on that tanker water or that tank which gets filled once or twice a week. And the brunt of the whole thing is being borne by women and children. Early morning, when you're driving across the city, walking across, even if you're traveling by bus, you will see that most of the neighborhoods, the poorer neighborhoods, it is the women and children who are, standing in line to collect the water. The fact that we are not able to provide the basic, the elixir of life for these communities just shows how inhuman we are, and we are okay with it. No, we've become okay with it. Over a period of time, we've got so we have normalized it. Nobody ever makes a noise. The fact that the ITBT neighborhoods could not get their milkman deliver the milk, or the fact that the grocery could not be lifted up to their floors, was a big issue. But how many times do we make an issue of the water not being available to everybody in Bangalore? That's the main problem, and we need to start from there. If a city can't give water, clean drinking water to everybody, what kind of a city is this? And our battles have to start from there. It's only when everybody has equal access to water, energy, housing, food, it's a city that is livable. So our battles are like, really, there are hard battles ahead of us, and we all need to wake up to it. And like I said, fix things at the ward level. We should all be storming our ward offices, make them work, make sure, because if you look at the 11th schedule and the 12th schedule, whether it is a panchayat or the ward committee, all these functions are in the 11th and the 12th schedule. So unless we go there and knock their doors and make them work, this is not going to work. So that is where we have to start.
Thank you so much, Bhargavi. There's another question for you from Katyayani Chamaraj. She says, if Subal shape is wrong, what should be the shape and why? And how many years back should we go to decide what is an encroachment on a lake?
Sorry, I didn't hear this.
Kerala Stadium.
I didn't hear the second. Yeah.
So she's asking if soup bowl shape is wrong, what should be a shape and why? And how many years back should we go to decide what is an encroachment on a lake? Where do we draw the line? Can we demolish Kantirava Stadium and Majestic Bus Stand if we say British maps or 100-year-old village maps are the standard?
Oh, well, if it is, the soup bowl structures are definitely not ecologically correct because if you understand, the ecology and the aquatic ecosystem of the lakes in Bangalore. So like I said, the NK Patil committee reviewed many lakes and then they came out with the recommendations on how lakes have to be rejuvenated, and the committee report has very clear guidelines on how lakes have to be rejuvenated. So it shows the shallow region, the deep region, and how they have to be, if after desilting, what needs to be done with that desilted material. So in the past, that desilted material would be distributed among the farmers. But today, since in urban areas, it is difficult to, transport that and distribute it to farmers. They have agreed to the concept of having 1 or 2 islands maximum with that material that has been desilted, but a complete jogging track made out of that desilted material disturbing the gradient of the lake is not acceptable ecologically. So that is where the soup bowl structure is not going to hold for long. While it might serve immediate purposes of jogging and walking and the feel good feeling, in the long run it might be disastrous. With respect to how far back we can go, I think that again should be based on some kind of a public consultation based on the kind of disasters we have seen in the recent past. And if at all we need to take a call and we need to demolish Kantirava Stadium, so be it. Why not turn that back into a lake? Because many cities across the world have demolished so many things, bringing back ecology, bringing back forests, bringing back parks into their cities. So if that is required, why not? There's enough and more money that the city is generating, so that money can be poured into that itself. So why not? Because for a city that is sitting on a plateau, lakes are more important, water is more important than anything else. So why not? Yeah.
Thank you so much, Bhargavi. Mamta S from the audience has, you can unmute and speak, Mamta.
ಹಲೋ ನಾನು ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಕೇಳ್ಬೋದಾ?
ಕೇಳಿ ಮಮತಾ, ಕೇಳಿ.
ಇದು ಭಾರ್ಗವಿ ಅವರಿಗೆ. ಕಳೆದ 3 ತಿಂಗಳ ಹಿಂದೆ ಎಸ್ಚಿನವರೇನೆ ಬಂದು, ನಾನು ಆನೇಕಲ್ ಭಾಗದಿಂದ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಿದ್ದೀನಿ, ಬೆಂಗಳೂರು ಡಿಸ್ಟ್ರಿಕ್ಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ. ಆನೇಕಲ್ ತಾಲೂಕ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿನೇ ರೈನ್ಬೋದವ್ರಿಗೂ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಆಗಿರೋದು. ಮತ್ತೆ ಹಾಗೆ ಆನೇಕಲ್ ಟೌನ್ ಬೇಸ್ಡ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ 3 ಕೆರೆಗಳು ರಾಜಕಾಲುವೆಗಳು ಬಂದಾಗಿ ಮೊನ್ನೆ ಮಳೆ ಬಂದಾಗ ಒಂದು 10 ಮನೆಗಳಿಗೆ ತುಂಬಾ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಆಯ್ತು. ನಾವು ಆ ESCದ ಒಂದು ತರಬೇತಿ ಪಡೆದಿದ್ದ ಒಂದು ಮೂಲಕನೇ ನಾವು ಪುರಸಭೆಗೆ ಹೋಗಿ ಕೇಳಿದಾಗ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಒಕ್ಕಲ್ತನ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರೋರು ಅನಾಮಧೇಯವಾಗಿ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರೋದನ್ನ ಅವ್ರನ್ನ ನಾವು ವೆಕೆಟ್ ಮಾಡಿಸ್ಬೇಕು, ಈ ರೀತಿದು ಒಂದು ಅವರ ಧೋರಣೆಗಳಿದೆ. ನಾನು ಡಾಲ್ಸಾದವರು ಇದನ್ನ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು, ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಇವರು ESCನವರು ಕೋಆರ್ಡಿನೇಟ್ ಮಾಡಿನೇ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದು. ನಾನು ಇದ್ರ ಮೂಲಕ ರಿಕ್ವೆಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡೋದು ಒಂದು, ಡಾಲ್ಸಾದವ್ರು ಬಂದ್ರು ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು, ಅದು ಹೇಗಿತ್ತು ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಆ ತರಬೇತಿ ನಿಜ ಒಂದು ಟಾರ್ಗೆಟ್ ಓರಿಯೆಂಟೆಡ್ ಒಬ್ಬರನ್ನೇನೋ ಒಂದು ಇದು ಮಾಡೋದು. ಇವರು ಸಿಂಗ್ ಅವ್ರು ಮಾತಾಡುವಾಗ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು, ಈ ತರದ ಒತ್ತುವರಿಗಳನ್ನ ಮಾಡಿಸುವಾಗ ಅಥವಾ ಅವರು ಲೈಸೆನ್ಸ್ ಕೊಡುವಾಗ್ಲೇ ಅಧಿಕಾರಿಗಳನ್ನ ಪನಿಷ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಮಾಡೋದನ್ನ ನಾವು ತಾಲೂಕಾ ಮಟ್ಟಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ಓರಿಯೆಂಟೇಷನ್ಸ್ಗೆ ಏನಾದ್ರೂ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡಾಗ ಮಾತ್ರ ಒಂದು ಮಟ್ಟಕ್ಕೆ ಸರಿ ಹೋಗ್ಬೋದು. ಮತ್ತೆ ಎರಡನೇದು, ಸರ್ವಿಸಸ್ ಅಥಾರಿಟಿಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾರಿರ್ತಾರೆ, ಸ್ಟೇಕ್ ಹೋಲ್ಡರ್ಸ್ ಅಥವಾ ಲೋಕಲ್ ಗವರ್ನೆನ್ಸ್ ಗಳಿಗೆ ಅಟ್ಲೀಸ್ಟ್ 6 months ಒನ್ಸ್ ಗೌರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಅದಕ್ಕೊಂದು ತರಬೇತಿಗಳನ್ನ ಕೊಡೋ. ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ 440 ಕೆರೆಗಳಿದೆ ಆನೇಕಲ್ ತಾಲೂಕ. ಇವತ್ತು ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿ ಸಕ್ರಿಯವಾಗಿ ಯಾವ್ದು ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ ಇದಕ್ಕೇನಾದ್ರೂ ಒಂದು ಪ್ಲಾನ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದಾ ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನ ನಾನು ಈ ಮೂಲಕ ಇದ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೇನೆ. ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ತುಂಬಾ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಇರೋರೆಲ್ಲರೂ ಬೇರೆ ಡಿಸ್ಟ್ರಿಕ್ಟ್ ಇಂದ, ನಾರ್ತ್ ಬೆಳಗಾಂ ಈ ಕಡೆಯಿಂದ ಬಂದಿರೋಂಥವ್ರು. ಅವ್ರಿಗೀಗ ಎಷ್ಟು ಭೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಅವ್ರು ಧ್ವನಿ ಎತ್ತಿದ್ರೆ ನೀವು ಜಾಗ ಖಾಲಿ ಮಾಡಿ, ಈ ಪೊಸಿಷನ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ ಭಾರ್ಗವಿ. ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ನಾವು ಏನ್ ಮಾಡಬಹುದು ಅಥವಾ ತಾವೇನ್ ಸಜೆಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀರಿ?
ಹಾ, ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ಸ್ ಮಮತಾ, ಈ ಇಶ್ಯೂನ ಹೈಲೈಟ್ ಮಾಡಿ ತಗೊಂಬಂದಿದ್ದಕ್ಕೆ. ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ಈಗ ನಾವ್ ಎಲ್ಲಾ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಗಳು ಕೈ ಜೋಡಿಸಿ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ. ಒಂದು ಒಳ್ಳೇದೇನಾಗಿದೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಕರ್ನಾಟಕ ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ ಲೀಗಲ್ ಸರ್ವಿಸಸ್ ಅಥಾರಿಟಿನವರು ಇದನ್ನ ಒಂದು ತುಂಬಾ ಸೀರಿಯಸ್ ಆಗಿ ತಗೊಂಡು ಎಲ್ಲಾ ಡಿಸ್ಟ್ರಿಕ್ಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲೂ ವರ್ಕ್ಶಾಪ್ಸ್ ಅವರೇ ನಿಂತು ಮಾಡಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅದು ಒಂದು ದೊಡ್ಡ ಸಪೋರ್ಟು. ಮತ್ತೆ it is changing the dynamics of how systems are working. ಅದನ್ನ ನಾವು ಲೆವರೇಜ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೋಬೇಕಂದ್ರೆ, ಸಣ್ಣ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಗಳು ಎಲ್ಲಾ ಒಂದು ಡಿಸ್ಟ್ರಿಕ್ಟ್ ಮತ್ತೆ ತಾಲೂಕ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಇರೋರು ಈ ಒಂದು ಟ್ರೈನಿಂಗ್ ಗೆ ಬಂದು ಅದನ್ನ ತಿರ್ಗಾ ರಿಪೀಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ. ಎಲ್ಲಾ ಲೆವೆಲ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ರಿಪೀಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ. ಕೆಲವು ಡಿಸ್ಟ್ರಿಕ್ಟ್ ಲೆವೆಲ್ ವರ್ಕ್ಶಾಪ್ಸ್ ನಾವು ಮಾಡಿರೋದ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ಅಂಗನವಾಡಿ ವರ್ಕರ್ಸು, ಆಶಾ ವರ್ಕರ್ಸು ಅವರು ಕೂಡ ಬಂದು ಭಾಗವಹಿಸಿ ಅವರ ಊರುಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಾಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು. ಮತ್ತೆ ಪಂಚಾಯತ್ ಲೆವೆಲ್ ಆಫೀಸರ್ಸ್ ಬಂದು ಅರ್ಥ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಅವ್ರ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ಸ್ ನೆಲ್ಲ ಶೇರ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು. ಸೊ ಇದು ಒಂದು ಲಿಟ್ರಸಿ ಕ್ಯಾಂಪೇನ್ ನಡೀತಲ್ಲ ಈಗ ಸುಮಾರು ವರ್ಷದ ಹಿಂದೆ, ಆ ತರ ಒಂದು ಕ್ಯಾಂಪೇನ್ ತರ ಇದನ್ನ ಎಲ್ಲಾರು ನಾವು ಎನ್ವೈರನ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ತಿರ್ಬೋದು, ಅಥವಾ ಮಹಿಳೆಯರ ವಿಷಯ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ತಿರ್ಬೋದು, ಅಥವಾ ಮಕ್ಕಳ ವಿಷಯ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ತಿರ್ಬೋದು, ಅಥವಾ ಡಿಸಬಿಲಿಟಿ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಅಥವಾ ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸ್ಜೆಂಡರ್ ಇಶ್ಯೂ ಇರ್ಬೋದು. ನಾವ್ ಏನೇ ಇಶ್ಯೂ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ತಿದ್ರೆ ಈ ಒಂದು ಕೆರೆ ನೀರು ಒಂದು ಥೀಮ್ ನ ನಾವು ಅಳವಡಿಸ್ಕೊಂಡು ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಎಲ್ಲಾರು ಇದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಮಾತಾಡಿ, ಕೋರ್ಟ್ ಆದೇಶ ಏನ್ ಹೇಳಿದೆ ಮತ್ತೆ NK ಪಾಟೀಲ್ ಕಮಿಟಿ ರಿಪೋರ್ಟ್ ಏನ್ ಹೇಳಿದೆ, ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ದಟ್ ಹ್ಯಾಸ್ ಬೀನ್ ಕಾಪಿ ಪೇಸ್ಟೆಡ್ ಇನ್ ಟು ದ ಫೈನಲ್ ಆರ್ಡರ್. ಹೀಗಿರುವಾಗ ದಟ್ ಹ್ಯಾಸ್ ಟು ಬಿ ದ ಬೈಬಲ್ ವೆನ್ ಇಟ್ ಕಮ್ಸ್ ಟು ಲೀಕ್ಸ್. ಅದನ್ನ ನಾವ್ ಎಲ್ಲಾರು ಅರ್ಥ ಮಾಡ್ಕೋಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಎವ್ರಿಬಡಿ ನೀಡ್ಸ್ ಟು ರೀಡ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಅಂಡರ್ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಡ್ ದಟ್ ಅಂಡ್ to make sure that that gets implemented. One organization alone will not be able to do this large scale awareness raising. So adike ನಾವು ಸುಮಾರು ವಾಟ್ಸ್ಆಪ್ ಗ್ರೂಪ್ಸ್ ಶುರು ಮಾಡಿದೀವಿ, ಡಿಸ್ಟ್ರಿಕ್ಟ್ ಲೆವೆಲ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ, ತಾಲೂಕ್ ಲೆವೆಲ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ, ಮತ್ತೆ NGO ಲೆವೆಲ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ. But there is only so much that we can reach. I think it's important everybody starts talking about it and understand how things have to be done. Avaga it will change the nature of the problems itself.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bhargavi. Okay, Mamta, would you like to say something?
ಎಸ್, ಈಗ ಎರಡನೇದು ಹೌದು, ತಮ್ಮಿಂದ ತರಬೇತಿ ಎಸ್ಸಿನವರು ಹೌದು, ಅದು ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ ಗವರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಗೆ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಂತ ಪ್ರೆಷರ್ ಇಂದಾನೇ ಅದಾಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ನಂದು ಎರಡನೇದು ಒಂದು ರಿಕ್ವೆಸ್ಟ್ ಮತ್ತೆ ಸಲಹೆ ಏನಂದ್ರೆ, ಡಾಲ್ಸಾದವ್ರು ಬಂದು ತರಬೇತಿ ಕೊಡ್ತಾರೆ ತಾಲೂಕ್ ಪಂಚಾಯತಿ, ಬಟ್ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಮುನ್ಸಿಫ್ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಸಿಗ್ನಲ್ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್. ಮುನ್ಸಿಫ್ ಅಥಾರಿಟಿಗಳನ್ನ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಇನ್ವಾಲ್ವ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳಕ್ಕೆ ತಾಲೂಕ್ ಪಂಚಾಯತಿ, ಜಿಲ್ಲಾ ಪಂಚಾಯತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಕೊರತೆಗಳಿದೆ. ಇದನ್ನ ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ತಾಲೂಕಾ ಮಟ್ಟಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋದಾಗ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಜಿಲ್ಲಾ ಪಂಚಾಯತ್, ತಾಲೂಕ್ ಪಂಚಾಯತಿಗಳು ಸೆಪರೇಟ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ, ಟೌನ್ ಮುನ್ಸಿಫ್ ಅಥಾರಿಟಿಗಳು ಸೆಪರೇಟ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಟೌನ್ ಮುನ್ಸಿಫ್ ಅಥಾರಿಟಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಬರುವಂತಹ ಕೆರೆಗಳಿಗೂ ಸಹ ನಾವು ಇನ್ವಾಲ್ವ್ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಂಡು ಅಲ್ಲಿನ ಅಥಾರಿಟಿಗಳನ್ನು ತಗೊಂಡು ನಾವು ಟ್ರೈನಿಂಗ್ ಗಳು ಮಾಡೋದು, ಮತ್ತೆ ಫಾಲೋ ಅಪ್ ಹೇಗೆ ನಡೆಯುತ್ತೆ ಏನು ಅದು ನಮ್ಗೆ ಹೇಗ್ ಗೊತ್ತಾಗತ್ತೆ. ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ಡಾಲ್ಸಾ ಬಂತು ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು, ನಾವು ಯಾವಾಗ್ಲೂ ESG-ನವ್ರಿಗೆ ಅಥವಾ ಅಲ್ಲಿನ ಕೇಳೋದಕ್ಕಿಂತ ಯಾರು ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ಅಕೌಂಟಬಿಲಿಟಿ ಇರ್ತಾರೆ, ವೆದರ್ ಇಟ್ ಇಸ್ ಗ್ರಾಮ ಪಂಚಾಯತ್ PDO ಆರ್ EO ಆರ್ ಟೌನ್ ಮುನ್ಸಿಪಾಲಿಟಿ CO. ಸೊ ಇದು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಕ್ಲಾರಿಟಿ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಆಗ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ ಅವತ್ತು. ಬರೀ DLSA ಜಡ್ಜ್ ಬಂದ್ರು ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು, ಅದು ಕೆಲವರು ಅದನ್ನ ಮಾನಿಟರ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗ್ತಿದ್ದಾರೆ, ಕೆಲವು ಕಡೆ ಆಗಿಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಈ ತರದ್ದು ಖಂಡಿತ ಇವರು ಭಾರ್ಗವಿ ಹೇಳಿದ್ದು ಅಕ್ಷರ ಸಹ ಸತ್ಯ. ಹಲವಾರು ಸಂಘಟನೆಗಳು ಜೊತೆ ಸೇರ್ಕೊಂಡು ತಾಲೂಕಾ ಮಟ್ಟದಲ್ಲಿ ಇದನ್ನ ಮಾಡ್ಲೇಬೇಕಾಗಿರುವಂತ ಪರಿಸ್ಥಿತಿ ಬಂದಿದೆ ಅಂತ ನನ್ನ ಅನಿಸಿಕೆ. ಇದನ್ನ ಖಂಡಿತ ಕೈ ಜೋಡಿಸ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋಣ. ಬಟ್ ಹೇಗ್ ಮಾಡೋದು ಅನ್ನೋದು ನಾವ್ ಇನ್ನೊಂದ್ಸಲ ಇದು ಮೀಟಿಂಗ್ ಆಗಿದ್ಮೇಲೆ ESCನವರೇ ತಾಲೂಕಾ ಮಟ್ಟದ ಸಂಘ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಗಳನ್ನ ಇನ್ವಾಲ್ವ್ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಂಡು ಒಂದು ಟ್ರೈನಿಂಗ್ ಗಳನ್ನ ಅಥವಾ ಡಿಸ್ಟ್ರಿಕ್ಟ್ ವೈಸ್ ತರಬೇತಿಗಳನ್ನ ಮತ್ತೆ ನಮ್ಗಳಿಗೆ, ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ಇದ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ನಮಗೂ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ, ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಕಷ್ಟ ಆಗಬಹುದು. ಸೊ ಲೇಟರ್ ಆನ್ ನಾವು ಇನ್ನು ಇದನ್ನ ಆಳವಾಗಿ ಅರ್ಥ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳಕ್ಕೆ ನಮಗೂ ಇದೊಂದು ತರಬೇತಿಗಳನ್ನ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಒಳ್ಳೇದು ಅಂತ ಅನ್ಕೊಂಡೆ.
ಖಂಡಿತ ಮಮತಾ. I think at any level, even at the civil society level, ಮತ್ತೆ ಸಣ್ಣ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಗಳನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ಜೋಡಿಸಿ ಮಾಡೋದಕ್ಕೂ ESG ಟೀಮ್ ರೆಡಿ ಇರ್ತಾರೆ. And ಇವಾಗಂತೂ all the documents are on the website. I would urge everybody to download, read, and share it further. ಕೆಲವೆಲ್ಲ ಕನ್ನಡಗೆ ಅನುವಾದ ಕೂಡ ಆಗಿದೆ. So please reach out to the ESG team, and the team will be happy to conduct more workshops, provide more clarity, share as much as possible. Sure. Okay.
Thank you, Bhargavi. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sachi.
Sachi.
Thank you, Mamta. Thank you, Bhargavi.
Yeah, if you can
Tousif,
quickly
would you
summarize
like to
that
make
in
a quick...
English, Sachi, that would be good, because that was a very good exchange there. If you could quickly summarize in English, or do you want me to do that?
Can you please do it?
Okay, so Mamta's question was very important because she was talking about how Anekal Taluk, which surrounds, or which is one of the affected areas, is actually a different administrative zone, and how a lot of the efforts of rejuvenation has been focused on cities and city municipal authorities rather than town municipal authorities and taluk officials. And recently, thanks to EAG's efforts, there was a concerted workshop that was done in Anekal Taluk, but that addressed the Taluk officials at that point in time. And this was a few months ago. And Mamta was sharing how the officials change, and therefore you have to start back at zero. And sensitizing authorities has to be through regular workshops. And Bhargavi agreed that yes, it has to be regular, and also that it can't just be one organization like ESG or any other one who does this on a consistent basis, but rather as progressive organizations and people interested in the working communities and supporting and in solidarity with the working communities, we should be standing up, and of course the ecology should be standing up and coordinating some of these things and trying to network and put pressure on the government to organize this on a regular basis. And Mamta also highlighted that the rainbow enclave that P Singh ji was talking about is actually in Anekal Taluk, and how they have been, the organizations that Mamta has been working with has been trying to highlight some of these issues in Anekal town itself, which is not too far from the affected areas. And there were some 10 families, 10 houses that were submerged, and they had to face the government's stubbornness in saying that they have to be evicted before anything can be done. So that was a very important exchange which brought out the need for engagement at various levels of government, and how when we talk of decentralization, we also are taking on the responsibility to sensitize a lot many officials than what it would be if it was to be centralized. So sorry, I just wanted to translate that so that it's shared with everyone here. I had a small response to what Katyani had asked from Bhargavi about how far do we go in terms of demolitions. So one very important thing that we have to recognize, Katyani ಅವರೇ, ಚಿಕ್ಕಪೇಟೆನಲ್ಲಿ ನೀರು ತುಂಬಿದಾಗ್ಲೆಲ್ಲ ಅದು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಮೆಜೆಸ್ಟಿಕ್ಕಿನ ಕೆರೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ನೀರು ಏನ್ ತುಂಬಿಕೊಳ್ತಾ ಇತ್ತೋ ಅದೆಲ್ಲ ಹೊರಗಡೆ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇರೋ ಕಾಲುವೆಗಳಿಗೆ ಮುಂದೆ ಎಲ್ಲೂ ನಿಕಾಸಿಗಳಿಲ್ಲ. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಅದು ಚಿಕ್ಕಪೇಟೆನಲ್ಲಿ ಬೀದಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಹರಿಯುತ್ತೆ, ಮನೆಗಳಿಗೆ ತುಂಬತ್ತೆ, ಕಾಂಪ್ಲೆಕ್ಸ್ಗಳಿಗೆ ತುಂಬತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ and ಇದು ಕಂಠೀರವ ಸ್ಟೇಡಿಯಂ, recently we saw photographs in the media also about how there was some, I don't remember which one this was some women's sports event where the players were emptying the the field and the stadium. And so ಆ ತರ ದೃಶ್ಯಗಳನ್ನ ನೋಡೋದು ಒಳ್ಳೇದ? ಇವಾಗ ನಾವು ಅಂತಾರಾಷ್ಟ್ರೀಯ ಮಟ್ಟದಲ್ಲಿ ನೋಡಿದ್ರೆ we do see that there are dams being destroyed or demolished because it has been ruining the ecosystem. So governments are recognizing that mistakes were made, and the best way to correct it is actually to demolish. So I don't think we should be squirmish about demolishing. ಯಾವ್ದಾದ್ರು ಒಂದು ಕಟ್ಟಡ, ದೊಡ್ಡ ಕಟ್ಟಡಗಳು, ಇವಾಗ ಸ್ಟೇಡಿಯಂ ಅಂತ ಅದನ್ನ ಕಟ್ಟಿರೋದನ್ನ ಹೊಡೆದಾಕ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂತಿದ್ರೆ ಅದೇನೆ ಸರಿ ಅನ್ಸಿದ್ರೆ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು. ಇಲ್ಲ ಆ ನೀರಿಗೆ ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಹೊರಗಡೆ ಹೋಗೋದಕ್ಕೆ ದಾರಿ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ. ನಾವು ದೊಡ್ಡ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಹೈವೇಗಳಿಗೆ, ಮೆಟ್ರೋಗಳಿಗೆ ನಾವು ಅಷ್ಟು ಲಕ್ಷಾಂತರ ಕೋಟಿಗಳು ಹಾಕಿ ನಾವು ಸಾಲಗಳು ತಗೊಂಡು ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನಾವು ಇದಕ್ಕೂ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು ಅಂತ ನನಗನ್ಸುತ್ತೆ, ನನ್ನ ವೈಯಕ್ತಿಕ ಅಭಿಪ್ರಾಯ ಇದ್ರಲ್ಲಿ. ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು.
Thank you so much, Viji. I would request Tousif to give his comments about this.
Sorry, in the last 5 seconds, it was like kind of stuck. Can you just repeat your question?
No, Tousif, this wasn't a question. I was asking you to give your concluding comments.
Okay. Yeah, I do completely agree with Bhargavi, what she said. It has to be a collaborated effort with multiple people who are working on ground. And definitely we should put pressure on the government through advocacy, to highlighting this in the press and all. But what I would like to add is people should also take ownership, and they also should be a little more responsible towards the ecosystem, environment and all. Generally here, what I say is, it is actually the moral decay of the people and the greed and all what they're basically they want everything for them, and they're not thinking about the others or the nature or the lakes or the trees, whatever it is, whether it is a marginalized community, all those things. So we need to equally work among the people as well. So unless people change, even we can't expect some great results with government also. Even after doing a lot of advocacy work, or even if we highlight this in the media and all, create awareness, all those things are there. It is just as if the people are not willing to do it by themselves, then it is just like, again they will find somebody who will take bribe, or they'll find some loophole where if they are not able to if they're not get caught or something like that, then again they will do the similar kind of, whether it is encroachments or all those, whether it is the encroachment of the lake beds or the raj callways, or damaging the ecosystem, all sorts of those kind of things. So we need to work on the people as well. That also has to be done along with whatever Bhargavi has told. Yeah, over to you, Sachi.
Thank you so much, Tousif. Would you please translate this, Viji?
ಯಾ, ಸೊ ತೌಸಿಫ್ ಅವರು ಒಂದು ವಿಷಯ ಹೇಳಿದ್ದು ಮುಖ್ಯವಾಗಿ ಸಂಕ್ಷಿಪ್ತವಾಗಿ ಹೇಳಬೇಕು ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ನಾವು ಇದರಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾನವೀಯತೆ ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನ ನಾವು ಗಮನದಲ್ಲಿ ಇಟ್ಕೋಬೇಕು. ಹಾಗೂ ಆ ಒಂದು ಮಾನವೀಯತೆಯ ದೃಷ್ಟಿಕೋನದಿಂದ, ಹ್ಯುಮ್ಯಾನಿಟೇರಿಯನ್ ಗ್ರೌಂಡ್ಸ್ ಇಂದ, ಮತ್ತು ಈ ಸರ್ಕಾರದ ಜೊತೆಗೆ ನಾವು ಹೆಂಗ್ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು, ಸರ್ಕಾರಿ ಅಧಿಕಾರಿಗಳ ಜೊತೆ ಹೆಂಗೆ ನಾವು ಇದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಿ ಹೆಂಗೆ ಮಾಡಿಸ್ಬೋದು, ಯಾವ ತರ ನಾವು ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ಒಂದು ಪರಿಹಾರ ಹುಡುಕ್ಬೋದು ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನು ನಾವು ಗಮನದಲ್ಲಿ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡು ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು. ಅದರಲ್ಲೂ ಒಗ್ಗಟ್ಟಾಗಿ ಈ ತಾರತಮ್ಯಗಳನ್ನ ಕಡಿಮೆ ಮಾಡೋ ಹಂಗೆ, ಜನಗಳ ಹಕ್ಕು ಅಧಿಕಾರಗಳಿಗೆ ಹೆಂಗೆ ನಾವು ಸಾಲಿಡಾರಿಟಿ ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಹೆಂಗ್ ನಿಂತ್ಕೋಬಹುದು, ಹೆಂಗ್ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನ ಗಮನಿಸ್ಕೊಂಡು ನಾವು ದಾರಿ ಹುಡುಕ್ಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ. ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ಒಂದು ನಿರ್ದಿಷ್ಟವಾದ ಒಂದು ಏನಂತಾರೆ ವರ್ಕಿಂಗ್ ಪ್ಲಾನ್, ಒಂದು ಕಾರ್ಯೋಜನೆಗಳನ್ನು ನಾವು ಹುಡುಕೋಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ. ಹಾಗೂ ಜನಗಳಿಗೆ ಇದರಲ್ಲಿ ಕಾಳಜಿ ಬರಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ, ತಗೋಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ, ಅಂಡ್ ಜನಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಇದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಕಾಳಜಿ ಹುಟ್ಟಿಸ್ಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನು ಅವರು ಒತ್ತಿ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು. ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು.
Thank you, Dviji. Kishore has raised his hand. You can unmute.
Hi. Thanks, thanks, Sachi. No, my question was to Syed also and to Bhargavi also, in the sense, because I'm taking from what Syed just said, that human beings themselves fundamentally have to change. Nahi to we will again get back to the same position that we were in, even if, because we are responding to an immediate form of something that has happened, and we are getting together to address that. But this has been a long-made disaster. So we will have to think about technology, techniques, and things Bhargavi is saying. We have to pay very close attention to it. But my question is, ki human desire ko, if we don't address the question of human desires at the top and at the bottom also. क्योंकि bottom में I'm not saying कि desires are all nice and all human, वो वैसा नहीं है. Unfortunately, it's not like that. I mean, high level of precarity, in fact, might bring out a lot of greed. And greed is exploited by programs like microfinance and everything, where greed is exploited. So, गरीब होना और वंचित होना, इसका ये कोई गारंटी नहीं है कि greed वहाँ पे problematic nahi hai. So we will have to think about, I don't know how we, and as movement, and the question of complicity. I mean, ye talk mein ye bhi tha, the word is used, complicit. We are all complicit. I mean, social movements are also complicit in the sense we are, and I'm using the word complicit as being held together. We are all part of this story, and that education needs to happen. And unfortunately, यही question कुछ 100 साल पहले लेनिन ने भी उठाया था, what is to be done, and we are debating that question, what is to be done. Or Lenin and Soviet Union, we failed. I mean, everything left failed miserably in terms of, I mean, we have to say that. So how do we think? I mean, it's a question, but it's an open question, and Bhargavi and Guru and Syed and to me also. So how do we work on desires on a long-term basis, not responding to immediate forms of violence? Yeah, so this is my comment and a question. Thank you.
I think Sachi got disconnected.
KP Singh sir, would you like to respond or share your thoughts on what Kishore has shared, has asked?
I agree with it, with his thoughts. See, somehow, right from the beginning, a child is put into a race where looks like earning money and amassing the physical facilities is the only purpose of life. So since we are put in a race right from the beginning, we have absolutely no check in our lives to stop and see, is it adding value, amassing the wealth and this being in the race, does that fulfill us? Does that really give us anything? If we get that stopping point somewhere at sometimes in our life, we'll feel that race only decays ourselves, the self, as well as everything around us. So there is fundamental flaw in the education system, which puts us in this race right from the childhood. Child has to be number one in the class. Child has to become this, become that. Unless one goes abroad and studies, one is not valued enough. So all that is what is at the root of it. Though our requirements are very small. We can actually live peacefully, harmoniously with a fraction of what we all have. But we are put in this race. And so the education system has to put in the human values, and that should get the priority. The child has to be kind of instill the universal human values of care for everyone else, looking everyone equal, giving everyone respect, not this class and caste, and these divides have to be removed. Every soul on the earth should be kind of considered. Whatever Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam philosophy that this country gave, that has to be imbibed. Unless that is done, we will keep facing these problems. We would only do quick fixes here and there, while the problems would remain. And I think Kishorji has very rightly pointed out to this, that I mean, I used to read a shloka or a couplet. In Hindi, it used to be Godhan, Gajdhan, Bajidhan, or Ratan Dhan Khan, Jab Ave Santosh Dhan, Sab Dhan Dhur Saman. So this contentment, that wealth of contentment, that has to come. But that is not taught at all at any stage in our lives. Earlier, probably, at least I have this couplet. I remember this and I have imbibed this. But these days, our children also only go to the convent. They only read English text, literature, and this and that. And that most of the time, they're also cut off from our local languages and this. So we have put our children in the race. Their lives are also screwed up. It's not that our children are happy. They're also miserable. I mean, it's unfortunate to see that. I've seen here around me here, many children have committed suicide. They have jumped from 8th floor, 10th floor of their houses. Children who are in 10th class and 12th class. I mean, what kind of a pressure we have put on them that they have to commit suicide at this early age? So we need to look at our education system. We need to reprioritize. What do we want from our lives? Otherwise, this will keep happening. People have no, I mean, in and around here, whatever problems we are facing, it's primarily because of the greed.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you.
ಸಂಕ್ಷಿಪ್ತವಾಗಿ ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಹೇಳ್ಬಿಡ್ತೀನಿ. ಕಿಶೋರ್ ಅವರು ಒಂದು ತುಂಬಾ ಮುಖ್ಯವಾದ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಕೇಳಿದ್ರು. ಆಸೆಗಳ ಬಗ್ಗೆ. ದುರಾಸೆಯ ಮೂಲ ಆಸೆ. ಈ ಆಸೆ ಬಂದಾಗ ಜನಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಅವ್ರು ಬಡವರೇ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಶ್ರೀಮಂತರೇ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಈ ಆಸೆಯನ್ನೇ ಒಂದು ಮೂಲ ಅಂತ ನಾವು ಗುರುತಿಸ್ಬೋದು. ಈ ತರ ಒಂದು ದುರುಪಯೋಗ ಮಾಡ್ತಿರೋದು ನಮ್ಮ ನಗರದ ವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಅಥವಾ ಕೆರೆಗಳ ಜಮೀನ್ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಇದೆಲ್ಲ ದುರುಪಯೋಗ ಆಗ್ತಿರೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಒಂದು ಮೂಲ ಹುಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋದ್ರೆ ಈ ಆಸೆ ಅನ್ನೋದಕ್ಕೆ ನಾವು ಕಾಣುತ್ತೀವಿ. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಏನ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು, ನಾವು ಹೆಂಗ್ ಇದನ್ನ ನಾವು ಎದುರಿಸೋದು ಅಂತ, ಇದ್ರ ಪರಿಹಾರ ಏನು ಅಂತ ಅವರು ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ, ನಮ್ಮೆಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಇದು, ನಮ್ಮೆಲ್ಲರ ಹೊಣೆನೂ ಹೌದು, ಬರೀ ಸರ್ಕಾರದೊಂದೇ ಅಲ್ಲ, ಈ ಜನಾಂದೋಲನಗಳದ್ದೇ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಹೌದು, ನಮ್ಮ ವೈಯಕ್ತಿಕ ಹೊಣೆನೂ ಇದೆ ಇದರಲ್ಲಿ ಅಂತ ಅವರು ಮುಂದಿಟ್ರು. ಸೊ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಸಿಂಗ್ ಸರ್ ಅವ್ರು ಹೇಳ್ತಿರೋದೇನು ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಹೌದು, ನಿಜವಾಗ್ಲೂ ಇದರಲ್ಲಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಇತಿಹಾಸದಲ್ಲೇ ಇರ್ಬೋದು ಅಥವಾ ನಮ್ಮ ಶಾಸ್ತ್ರಗಳಲ್ಲೇ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಇದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಸುಮಾರು ಮಾತುಗಳು ಬಂದಿದ್ದಾವೆ. ಆದ್ರೆ ಈಗಿನ ಒಂದು ವಿದ್ಯಾಭ್ಯಾಸದ ಒಂದು ವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಅಥವಾ ನಮ್ಮ ಜೀವನದ ಉದ್ದೇಶಗಳು, ನಾವು ಏನಂತ ಗುರುತಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದೀವಿ, ನಮ್ಮ ಮಕ್ಳಿಗೆ ಏನಂತ ಹೇಳ್ಕೊಡ್ತಾ ಇದೀವಿ ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನ ನಾವು ಈಗ ಇದನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ನಾವು ಗುರುತಿಸ್ಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ. ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಸುಧಾರಣೆ ತರಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ ಅನ್ನೋದು ಅವರು ಮುಂದಿಟ್ರು. Gabriel, would you like to add something? I think we see that you had unmuted briefly. Please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Okay. No, I mean, I was asked to unmute. It is not my own drive, but I find it a very fascinating session, because I was just recently in Bangalore for several weeks when all this was going on, and I was near Sarjapur Road, so I understand completely what is being told here. And I couldn't imagine all this, But I lived in Bangalore way back in the early 70s, and I did a research with the Christian Institute for the Study of Religion and Society under Dr. Eman Thomas. And, you know, at that time, there was this development debate going on. And not only by critical minds like CISIS and all that, even at the level of the United Nations, there was this Brundtland report, Limits to Growth and all that stuff. That was a little bit later, I suppose. I mean, even 1 or 2 decades later, I don't remember exactly when that came, you know. But it's, for me, it is all in one piece, you know, because it is, I find it so difficult to comprehend that within a lifetime, we can't manage to change it, even if we are very young when we realize what's wrong, you know. And I find this a desperate thing, because it is then as if every new generation has to start again, you know. And but I think this last discussion about everybody having been successful and landing up, taking their own lives and all, that is a very much a key element also, which we have to insert into these discussions, you know, because all this thing about performance and I don't know, success and all this junk, you know. So unless we really very drastically bring up the young generations with other objectives and with a different view of things, this will not work, you know. And of course, see, the problem is like many of us more leftists, we work with the working class, no? But within the working class, then there is this ambition that there will be a new generation who is not working class and who will make it in life, no? And I think that's also the disaster, that an integral understanding of what is viable, who's the working class, why do we stand with the working class, not that they can go out and be successful. We want a working class who doesn't get the labor codes against which we are now fighting, you know, who succeed in doing their own laws and who succeed to redefine the production process in a completely different way. You know, it's not all these companies around Bangalore and all who have to tell us where we have to go, you know. So I think unless we address all this cannot be at all be solved just at the ecological level or at any administrative level, but by a very radical rethinking of what are our own objectives. How do we relate to the working class? How does the working class survive in this sort of an environment without trying to become at least petty capitalists or something, you know? So I think, this is a lot of food for thought, and I think maybe we need several more webinars, you know, to even get thinking along these lines.
Yeah, it needs more than just webinars, Gabriel.
Who do you tell? I mean, we are all on the road, but I'm thinking at the conceptual level, you know. At the conceptual level, obviously, you know, that we have to smash all these things.
Let me just give a brief, you know, translation of what you shared, Gabriel.
Please do.
Gabriel ಅವರು ತಮಿಳ್ನಾಡಲ್ಲಿರೋದು. ಅವರು ಇತ್ತೀಚೆಗೆ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರಲ್ಲಿ ಇದ್ರಂತೆ, ಸರ್ಜಾಪುರದ ಹತ್ರನೇ ಇದ್ರಂತೆ. ಈ ಎಲ್ಲ ನಡೀತಾ ಇದ್ದಾಗ ಇದೆಲ್ಲ ಬಂದಾಗ ಅವ್ರೂ ಹತ್ರದಲ್ಲೇ ಇದ್ರು. ಸುಮಾರು ಹತ್ರದಿಂದ ನೋಡಿದೆ ನಾನು. 70ನೇ ದಶಕದಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನು ಬೆಂಗಳೂರಲ್ಲಿ ಇದ್ದಾಗ ನಾವು ಅಟ್ಲೀಸ್ಟ್ ನಮ್ಮ ಸಮುದಾಯಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರೋಗ್ರೆಸಿವ್ ಪ್ರಗತಿಪರ ಸಂಘಟನೆಗಳಲ್ಲಿ, ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಹಾಗೂ ಸರ್ಕಾರದ ಮಟ್ಟದಲ್ಲೂ ತಕ್ಕ ಮಟ್ಟಿಗೆ, ಅದರಲ್ಲೂ ಅಂತಾರಾಷ್ಟ್ರೀಯ ಮಟ್ಟದಲ್ಲಿ ಈ ಒಂದು ವಿಚಾರವಾದ ನಡೀತಾ ಇತ್ತು. ಏನಪ್ಪಾ ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಪ್ರಗತಿ ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನ ಎಲ್ಲಿವರೆಗೂ ತಗೊಂಡೋಗ್ಬೇಕು, ಇದಕ್ಕೊಂದು ಅಂತ ಇರ್ಬೇಕು, ಇದನ್ನ ನಾವು ಹಿಂಗೆ ಬಳಸ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರೆ ಆಗೋದಿಲ್ಲ, ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ಒಂದು ಇತಿಮಿತಿಗಳನ್ನ ನಾವು ಗುರುತಿಸ್ಬೇಕು ಅನ್ನೋದು. ಅದು 70ನೇ ದಶಕದಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದ್ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಇದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಚರ್ಚೆ ನಡೀತು. ಬಟ್ ಅದಾದ ನಂತರ ಹಂಗೆ ಅದು ಉಳಿದೋಯ್ತು. 90ನೇ ಇಸ್ವಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಬಂದಿದ್ದಂತಹ ಈ ಪ್ರೈವೇಟೈಸೇಷನ್, ಲಿಬರಲೈಸೇಷನ್ ಇದೆಲ್ಲ ಆದಾಗ್ಲಿಂದ ಒಂದು ಬೇರೆನೆ ದಾರಿ ಹಿಡಿದು ಶೋಷಣೆ ಮತ್ತು ಶ್ರಮಿಕ ವರ್ಗದ ಒಂದು ಶೋಷಣೆ ಇದರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಎಲ್ಲ ನಾವು ನೋಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರೆ, ಇವಾಗಿನ ಈ ಲೇಬರ್ ಕಾನೂನು ತಿದ್ದುಪಡಿಗಳು ಬಂದಿರೋದು ನಿಜವಾಗ್ಲೂ ಅದನ್ನ ನಾವು ಎತ್ತಿ ನೋಡ್ಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಹಾಗೆ ಇದು ಬರೀ ನಾವು ಒಂದು ಪರ್ಯಾವರಣದ ದೃಷ್ಟಿಕೋನದಿಂದಾನೇ ಆಗ್ಲಿ ಅಥವಾ ಬರೀ ನಾವು ಹೆಂಗೆ ಸಿಟಿ ಪ್ಲಾನಿಂಗು ನಗರದ ಕಾರ್ಯೋಜನೆಗಳು ಮಾಡೋದ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ಅದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ನೋಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರೆ ಆಗೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಅದನ್ನ ನಾವು ನಮ್ಮ ಕಿಶೋರ್ ಅವ್ರು ಹಂಚ್ಕೊಂಡಂಗೆ, KP ಸಿಂಗ್ ಅವ್ರು ಹಂಚ್ಕೊಂಡಂಗೆ, ಗೇಬ್ರಿಯಲ್ ಅವರು ಅದನ್ನ ಒತ್ತು ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ನಾವು ನಿಜವಾಗ್ಲೂ ಇದನ್ನ ನಾವು ಏನಕ್ಕಾಗಿ ಬದುಕ್ತಾ ಇದೀವಿ, ನಮ್ಮ ಜೀವನದ ಉದ್ದೇಶ ಏನು ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನ ನಾವು ಗುರುತಿಸ್ಕೋಬೇಕು. ಹಾಗೂ ಅದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ನಾವು ನಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ, ನಮ್ಮ ಮಕ್ಕಳಲ್ಲಿ, ನಮ್ಮ ನೆರೆಹೊರೆಯಲ್ಲಿ, ನಮ್ಮ ಜನ ಸಮುದಾಯಗಳಲ್ಲಿ, ಆಂದೋಲನಗಳೆಲ್ಲನೂ ಇದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಚರ್ಚೆ ನಡೆಸಬೇಕು. ಬದಲಾವಣೆ ಕಡೆಗೆ ನಾವು ನಡಿಬೇಕು. ಇನ್ನೂ ಹಲವಾರು ವೆಬಿನಾರ್ಗಳು ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ. ಅದಲ್ದೇನೆ ಬೇರೆ ಕಾರ್ಯೋಜನೆಗಳನ್ನು ನಾವು ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನ ಹಂಚ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರು. ಸಾಚಿ ಅವರು ವಾಪಸ್ ಸೇರಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಅಂತ ಅನ್ಕೊಳ್ತೀನಿ. ಇಲ್ಲ, ಮತ್ತೆ ಮಿಸ್ ಆಗಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಸರಿ, 8 ಗಂಟೆ ಆಯ್ತು. ಈ ಒಂದು ಸಭೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಬಂದು ಭಾಗವಹಿಸಿದ ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಗಣ್ಯರಿಗೆ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು. ಹಲವಾರು ಬಂದವರು ಹೊರಡ್ಬೇಕಾಗಿದೆ, ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಇವಾಗಿಲ್ಲ, ಬಟ್ ಅವ್ರಿಗೂ ನಮ್ಮ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು. ನೀವೆಲ್ಲರೂ ಸೇರಿದ್ದಕ್ಕೆ ತಮಗೂ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು. ಈ ಸರಣಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರತಿ ಭಾನುವಾರ ಗ್ರೌಂಡೆಡ್ ವಾಯ್ಸಸ್, ಜಮೀನಿ ಆವಾಜೆ, ನೆಲದ ಕೂಗುಗಳು, ಈ ಒಂದು ಸರಣಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಹಲವಾರು ದೇಶದ ಹಲವಾರು ಜನ ಸಮುದಾಯಗಳ, ಜನ ಆಂದೋಲನಗಳ ಧ್ವನಿಗಳನ್ನ ನಾವು NAPM ಮೂಲಕ ಇದನ್ನ ನಾವು ಹೈಲೈಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೆ, ಅಲ್ಲಿನ ಸಂಘರ್ಷಗಳೇನು, ಅಲ್ಲಿನ ಸಂಘಟನೆಯ ಏನು ಮುಖ್ಯಾಂಶಗಳೇನು ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನ ನಾವು ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ತಿಳ್ಕೋಬೇಕು. ನಾವು ಒಬ್ರಿನೊಬ್ರಿಗೆ ಸಾಲಿಡಾರಿಟಿನಲ್ಲಿ ನಿಂತ್ಕೋಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಈ ಒಂದು ಸರಣಿ ಅನ್ನೋದು. ತಾವೆಲ್ಲ ಸೇರಿದ್ದಕ್ಕೆ ತುಂಬಾ ಸಂತೋಷ. ಮುಂದಿನ ಭಾನುವಾರನೂ ತಾವು ಸೇರ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ವಿನಂತಿ. ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು ಎವ್ರಿವನ್ ಫಾರ್ ಜಾಯ್ನಿಂಗ್ today's edition of Grounded Voices. Sachi unfortunately has got disconnected, so I have kind of stepped up to the role of thanking all the speakers and the organizers for today's session. Grounded Voices is a series of sessions from various parts of the country where as part of NAPM we are trying to bring out their struggles and their uniqueness and their relatability, how each of us can stand in solidarity with them and be together in our struggles for justice and peace. Thank you for joining, everyone. Thank you for the speakers for sharing their thoughts and views on the Bangalore floods. And we request everyone to please join in next Sunday for the next edition of Grounded Voices. Zindabad.
Zindabad. Thanks for the translation.
Thank you.